revisions as well as the zoning text amendments, which, yeah, just so that people are aware of that. Slide. Again, this was covered. This is just a summary of the text amendments. So go on to the next slide. So this is the review criteria for a zoning text change. I'm going to be going into some detail about some of these and kind of talking a little bit about some of the others. And the slide, please. So Bright Ravens is not seeking an actual zoning change for the property at Brainerd Place. It's in a zone. It's already been designated as being in the town village district center in the B2 and the B3. What we understand from the comments and what we understand is that what the commission is going to be looking at is the text amendments and how they relate to the criteria, both as to the project and as to the entire town. And that's just the review criteria language about it being taking into account the various factors, whether they're favorable or unfavorable to the change. Slide. So what I'm going to be talking mostly about is how we see the project details, some of the project details that are going to be presented tonight, and how they relate to the review criteria that the commission will be looking at. And so in terms of the town-wide basis, to get a special permit for mixed-use development, there's got to be some connection to the plan of conservation and development. And the project details in this case establish how the project is qualified to meet those goals so as to be eligible for the benefits of the zoning amendment, and why other properties in the town are not likely to be eligible for those benefits. Slide. As well, the project details are relevant to the impact of the project details on the review criteria for the Brainerd project, and it's
recording in progress.
One of the key things that I want to convey is that the project, as it's currently approved, has been determined not to be economically viable in terms of the things that remain to be done. Obviously, a lot of work has been done, a lot of buildings have gone up, and those are anticipated to go just as originally approved. The remaining project, which will be explained, I'm not going to get into the details, but the conclusion of Bright Ravens is that that project, if it's built the way that it's approved, would not be marketable, and it wouldn't be, the market would not be able to absorb the commercial space. So what the review criteria, including the goals of the POCD, will be positively impacted if the zoning amendments and the special permit modifications are approved, and also how the review criteria, including the goals of the POCD, would be adversely impacted if the zoning amendments are not approved. Slide. So the first review criteria, and probably the most important one is relative to the project details, is the fact that the review criteria number 1 effectively incorporates the plan of conservation and development by reference. So what that means is that every relevant factor that's in the plan of conservation and development that would pertain to the project is effectively part of review criteria 1, and those factors can and we think should be taken into account. And the slide, please. I'm going to go into several of those, but so one of the most relevant goals is this is from the POCD, the plan, stressing that the redevelopment of the Elmcrest Psychiatric Hospital, as well as strengthening of the town center, are the two urgent and important things that are stressed in the plan of conservation and development. And so those are site-specific. Obviously, there's only one former psychiatric hospital campus, and so to really understand what is an appropriate development for the Elmcrest Psychiatric Facility, that really brings into focus all the different aspects of the project itself, what it looks like, pedestrians, design, color. I mean, appropriate is in the eye of the beholder, so visual, aesthetics, things of that nature all come into play. And so we think that being able to present details of the project will hopefully help the commission to assess whether these text amendments are how they're going to impact the appropriateness of the development and the strengthening of the town center. Just for an example, I mean, the relevant project details these are right out of the plan of conservation and development, the adherence to the New England vernacular with gable roofs and punched openings and things of that nature. So here, when as opposed to a normal zoning change application where you're looking at things in a very generic way, in this case, the commission has some context. You've got the actual project that's been constructed, and then you've got the plans for what absolutely would be done if the text amendments were passed and the special permit modifications were passed. Slide. So another what we think another criteria that relates directly to sort of site-specific things is this goal of improving vehicular and parking amenities and humanizing the streetscape, which kind of brings into play walkways, open space, how it kind of lays out with benches and access to things, street lights, landscaping. So obviously those are site-specific, and so we think that would be helpful for the commission's evaluation of that factor. Slide. Perhaps as important as the first criteria would be the goal of preserving open space, but more so historic resources. I'm not going to talk about the specifics of the historic restoration. That's going to go on. That will be for others. But to evaluate when you've got a project that does have specific plans for that, and we think very very significant and something that the town can be proud of. I mean, it seems that that's a relevant consideration that would be helpful in terms of making determinations to actually what's going to be done on the site, and and then the open space similarly. What is the open space? We know what it's going to be if the modifications are approved. Slide. I just want to add too that one of the things that I mentioned about focusing on not only the project itself but the townwide impacts. One of the things that makes that a little different here is the fact that the nature of the Elmcrest, the town center. There's a lot of things that really make this project sort of the one that's most suitable to the zone, the overlay zone, and these zoning text amendments in particular. the clearest example is Elmcrest. I mean, that's clearly a factor that nobody else can match, because that's viewed as the most urgent and important thing. And as you'll hear, you know, the nature of the historic restoration and how significant that is and things like water and sewer, and anything's possible, but trying to have another project that would sort of pigeonhole into these criteria is going to be very challenging, and so it kind of gives some context for addressing the project itself versus looking at the impact on the entire town. And so the next one is promoting economic development. Again, a pretty important factor, and one that really can be, I think, very thoroughly evaluated and very, completely by the commission, by having an understanding of what happened after the project was approved in terms of the economics, and how the changes that are proposed are going to impact marketability, renting, surrounding properties, and everything. And it's sort of what happens if the project doesn't get amended. That takes it down one path versus changing the amendments. You're going to then have there's an assessment of that by Bright Ravens as to the impact of that. But without explaining all that, without explaining the details, it's going to be difficult, I think, for the commission to really understand that. It would be sort of in a vacuum. So, slide. So on to that was the plan that goes great. And now on to the review criteria that's expressly stated in the zoning law. And I will say that a lot of these criteria, there's a lot of redundancy, and so I'm going to try to, for the sake of time, just kind of hit the points and then move on. But the purposes of whether the purposes of zoning and the regulations, preserving the unique historical and architectural features, while ensuring that new uses and structures will be in keeping with the established character. I mean, that covers just about, if you took any site-specific thing, you could fit it into that, I think. I mean, I think and again, the commission decides what they think is relevant, but I do think that there's a broad allowance there for that. Slide. The third criteria is the changes that have taken place in the rate and pattern of development and land use within the town and the community. This is going to be, there's other factors that have to do with impact on the surrounding land, and then another one that has to do with impact on property values in the surrounding land. They all kind of lead to the same point, that you've got specific information available to you about what the developer is planning on doing with the project and how they plan on acting to make this a success, and how that's going to have a positive impact on all of those factors. But an understanding of the market and how they're changing the configuration of the spaces, commercial, residential, retail, medical, all those things that those are directly relevant to those criteria. And Dan will be talking about one of the other projects going on in town that is sort of, it's been a symbiotic kind of a thing, and that again is sort of a empirical result of the project itself, which is much more helpful than talking about it in a vacuum. Slide. this is kind of what I was talking about. I mean, these are all supply of land available, physical suitability, utilities, drainage, improvements. I mean, this is all site-specific stuff. Again, when you're doing a zone change, when it's a generic thing, you got to be generic. But when you have the information at your disposal, it just seems to make sense that it would be a good thing to have an understanding of that and have an understanding of.
Just for the record, it's not a zone change.
No, I know that.
Right, okay.
No, that's what I'm saying. I'm
Okay.
saying that if it was that would be a generic kind of a thing. Here you have, I'm trying to differentiate between a zone change and here where you're doing a text amendment.
Okay.
So, next slide. The eighth one, impact on surrounding area, I already touched on that, in terms of it's economic, it's physical, it's visual, it's aesthetic. It's all tied to, and can be tied, I think, to a lot of the details of the project. Slide. Traffic, that's gonna be handled by Joe Valskis. Slide. Impact on property values, I touched on that. The project details being relevant to that are listed there. Slide. Environmental impacts, health and general welfare of the community. Again, those are very broad criteria. It's going to be up to the commission to decide what weight they're going to give to the various site-specific impacts on those, but there does seem to be a pretty good tie between the project details and the overall assessment of its impact on the environment as well as on the health and general welfare of the community. So I am going to turn this over to Dan Bertram now. So thank you.
I guess my one comment, if I could make before Dan starts, is that a lot of what you have cited so far deals with the POCD and how Brainerd Place meets the goals of the POCD. But I guess one could argue that the plan, as it is approved today, really meets a lot of those goals, such as strengthening the town center, trying to attract business. So I think, regarding this proposed text amendment change, we really want to focus in on, if we can, the reasoning behind the request to change the allowable number of units and the ratio of residential to commercial. I think that's really what we want to focus on. So just my opinion.
May I say something?
Yes,
you
do.
The points that were all laid out just now address a review criteria for zone changes, not for text amendments. And so
Victoria.
when I... Pardon?
Sorry, I don't want to interrupt. 10.3D does include text amendments as well. 10.3D.
I would agree that some of the criteria are mainly relevant to a zone change,
Okay.
but it does include text amendments in that. Is it 10.3D3?
I think it's 10.3D.
I maybe have a different, maybe the wording in my text is different, but I don't see anything about.
So if you look in like 3 here, petitions to modify or add text to the zoning regulations, so they do discuss text amendments within that.
Right.
Me and Carrie would
But-
agree that the review criteria does hew towards more to a map change, but this is our review criteria for
Okay,
both.
so we're going to be more open with that, and it's not be so literal.
That's within your discretion, the commission's, what you're going, at the end of the day,
I mean,
you also have statutory requirements for text amendments and what you should be considering. So It's not just 10.3?
Right,
Right.
okay. All right, thanks.
Okay, go ahead, Dan.
All right. Good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
Dan Bertram, 69 Marlboro.
Dan, we can't hear you.
Oh, I'm sorry. Is that better?
No.
Okay. So, given that input, I'll...
It's not really,
Oh, okay. I'll lean forward. Yeah, no, I got you. This, the boom doesn't extend, so I'll lean closer to it. Yeah, I got you. I will do that. My posture is not very good, but I'll be heard at least, so that's good. So in order to, I think, address the concern you just gave, I'll go back in time to the beginning of this process with our attempts to lease the property commercially, because the redevelopment of the Elmcrest site in the POCD is a relevant backdrop, and so we can talk to our experience in trying to lease commercial space, and we can, from there, talk about the adequacy of the current plan and how these changes enable us to take a different approach that we believe will be economically successful. Is that fair?
Yep. Sounds good.
All right, excellent. So, in the last discussion, and I didn't really want to go here, but I think I have to, in terms of input we had from our second commercial broker. The first commercial was Atlantic Realty, and they were on the job for a few years. We replaced them with a local resource, Sullivan Hayes, and when Sullivan Hayes decided they didn't want to work on it anymore, they wrote us a memo as to why. And so this is what we believe to be very informed input on the Portland market. And so I'll read a couple excerpts from their letter to our team when they decided that they no longer wanted to represent this project. Portland is not considered to be a significant retail corridor. Most retail, restaurant, and service users would not even know where Portland and this intersection are located and would therefore need to be educated as to the market, which makes the leasing process difficult. The amount of retail space proposed by your plan at this intersection is much more than the market could conceivably absorb. This location lends itself to convenience and service uses and not to users requiring a large trade area. This limits the number of tenants we feel would be reasonable prospects. The significant retail cluster in this area is in Middletown and not Portland. This consists of successful restaurant cluster that has grown over the last 10 years on Main Street in Middletown, and the regional and community retail that is located along Route 66, Washington Street in Middletown. We feel that once we educate people on the Portland market, they will make a decision that if they want to service the Portland market, they are better off doing it from a location in Middletown, which had a much larger draw that would also include the Portland market. Specific to the site plan, they said the second floor space of Building A is extremely difficult to lease. Other than a large medical user, we do not feel that the space is leasable as retail space. As office, it would be considered Class B space and made up of mostly small independent businesses at unattractive rents for new construction. To fill the amount of space on the second floor with these types of users is very difficult and a long process. The basement space in the A building, we feel, is not leasable, period, full stop. It would be very difficult to lease the rear portion of space in retail building A that creates the L shape, given that this portion of the L does not have any exposure on either Marlboro or Main Street. This would be a problem if this entire leg of L were leased to one tenant. However, given the Portland trade area, it is more likely that tenants will be smaller in size and not likely to want this large a space. Now, that's where our starting point is. That's post-approval. That's years of effort of trying to get interest. And if we transition from that input to our current brokerage firm, CB Richard Ellis, so CBRE. We have a letter from early April that says, "Dear Paul," this is one of my counterparts within the DeMarco Group and a partner on this project. "Thank you for sharing the proposed new site plan for Brainerd Place in Portland." This is obviously contemplating the revised approach to buildings A and B that we look to give as an example for the way that the zoning regs could be embodied, if you will. "The configuration for buildings A and B on the below site plan are much more marketable than the previous plan. Current demand for retail, office, and medical spaces in Portland is in the 2,500 to 5,000 square foot range. The spaces being offered for lease would be more in line with the active requirements in the market. We are hopeful that ownership will receive approval from the town of Portland so we can promote this new site plan and building layout ASAP." So in the current configuration, we were able to get a Starbucks into one building. We have a remainder space of that building that we think is going to do well as the Starbucks starts building out. They did submit their building permits about 10 days ago, so they will fit up the space, and they are hoping to open in October. So that's bat on the ball, the way I look at it. We're just getting started. So the question is, how do we keep going? And so when we look at what the remaining spaces are, and we'll get into that a little bit, we have some space in the F building, but other than that, we have the historic buildings, and then we have the original A and B. The original A is almost 70,000 square feet, and because of that large amount, it's very hard to get enough critical mass to actually justify ever building the building. And that is, I think, empirically proven by the years of effort. There was discussion back in the day, if you just start demolishing up there, if you just start building infrastructure, if you just start building buildings, right, then the large users will come. And that hasn't been our experience. And so I know it's unpopular to come out and say, everybody, it's not working. But I'm not trying to only say that. I'm trying to say it's not working, but here's a solution we think does work. And we think very creative in coming up with it. So in terms of speaking, we're going to have some other people present a few things, but I wanted to, because the letter was from another significant investor in the Portland community that came into this situation in recent times and did an evaluation of the town and its potential and decided to come here, I wanted to read a letter from Pomeroy Lodging. And so I'll start with that. From May 7th. To the Planning and Zoning Commission, Town of Portland, regarding the Brainerd Place proposed text amendment. Dear Chairman Ellsworth, Pomeroy Lodging was recently approved to construct a Nordic spa located at the Brownstone Quarry. We are excited to break ground this summer and deliver an exceptional spa for this fantastic location. I am writing today to express my support for the Brainerd Place project and share some thoughts on the synergies and alignment our projects share as lead large development investments in the town of Portland. The investment being made at Brainerd Place was one of the reasons we chose to invest in our next Nordic spa within the town of Portland. We believe the housing that will be provided at Brainerd Place will be very desirable for our new employees, and that the spa services will be equally desirable to all the residents of Brainerd Place. We have had discussions with Mr. Bertram and reviewed the potential impact of the regulation changes proposed. We feel that what is planned for Phase 3 aligns with Pomeroy's vision for Portland's Central Business District. The area has great potential to evolve into an upscale pedestrian experience that connects our spa, located at the northern edge of the district. This is the zoning map for the town right now, and that is, it's a little washed out, but there's an arrow that runs up to the the edge here. I don't know if we can zoom in on that, but it's generally this location right here. Yeah, if you can zoom in on that on this location right here. If we can't expand, then that's fine. So the idea here is that this arrow comes up to a section which is the northern edge of the quarry, and then, there we go. I'll wait 1 second to see if that's zoomable. Oh, that's very good, thank you. That's very helpful. Okay, here we go. So this right here is the northern edge of the central business district, okay? So it goes from this property, which is where the spa is redeveloping, to this whole zone here along Main Street. And then the Brainerd Place project is located right here. So when they say the area has great potential to evolve into an upscale pedestrian experience that connects our spa located at the northern edge of the district, we're talking here, and the properties that they reference here, the properties in between, will increase in value, and some will be redeveloped, enhancing the downtown experience for all residents. Such investment typically only happens after others see the first movers were successful, so completing projects quickly is important. We intend to open our spa within a year. To receive the electrical service required for our new facility, we are being told by Eversource that they cannot provide sufficient power until they upgrade the grid in the area. We also understand that to start that upgrade, Eversource needs Brainerd Place to agree to shoulder some of the burden, something that requires a certain amount of electrical usage from its development. We understand that completing phase 2 of Brainerd Place alone is not sufficient to carry that burden. For our business, the more people that move into town and live in the upscale development proposed for Brainerd Place's final phase, the better. As our spa offering is a destination experience, we think in terms of differentiation. The prospect of a destination rooftop restaurant at the top of the proposed Aragoni building truly resonates with our vision. We also believe the Gildersleeve building will make, which is so the Aragoni building is building A, the revised building A, and the Gildersleeve building will be the revised building B. We also believe the Gildersleeve building will make a much more attractive first impression than seeing a CVS across from a Walgreens on the corner of Main and Marlborough Street, especially for people coming to the area for the first time. In fact, we believe the Phase 3 proposed plan is much better than what was originally proposed to be developed at that property. The overall plan is very much in line with what we have seen succeed in mixed-use communities in other markets. We share Mr. Bertrand's vision and applaud him for, as he says, refusing to lease to Dollar Tree just to fill space. When the goal for redeveloping the Brainerd Place property is to stimulate development in the surrounding area in ways that improve the quality of life of its residents. We're excited to be one such party, investing in this chapter of Portland's history. We urge the Commission to do anything in its power to increase the odds of attracting further investment in the town and hope to see Brainerd Place quickly completed in the manner proposed over the next couple of years. Yours truly, Chris Buchala, Executive Vice President, Real Estate and Development from Pomeroy Lodging. With that, I'd like to turn it over to the team and go over some of the manifestations of these proposed text amendments.
Just one quick question, Dan.
Oh, please.
You mentioned results of some of the marketing firms and their analysis on demand for commercial space.
Yep.
Has there been a similar study done for demand for residential in the area?
We have absolutely done that and can talk to the comparable product in I specifically track Knollcrest in Middletown, the Tannery in Glastonbury, and then other new developments, including even in downtown Hartford. Then there's such a shortage of, we'll call it highly I'll actually even call it workforce housing. We announced the prices that we see for the studios 1s and 2s at the EDC meeting recently, and so I can give you some of the starting rents that are being asked. We were at $1,600 for a studio, $1,950 for a 1-bedroom, and $2,400 for two bedrooms. And so that's starting price per type of unit. But that's very much in line with what's going on in central Connecticut, up and down the 91 corridor.
And has it been shown that the demand is there for this
Yes.
type of housing?
Yes, in that it has to do with what you see leasing up and the absorption rates that are going on in the surrounding area. And so we are underbuilt. Their housing is just very much behind demand.
Thank you.
Sure.
Good evening. For the record, my name is Steve Sullivan from CCA Engineers. I'm a professional engineer registered in the state of Connecticut. My charge on this project was the site engineering. So I'm just going to go over some high-level components to present to you. I understand that site-specific details will be presented at a future meeting under the special permit modification process. So I'll be, again, just presenting some high-level components. If you can switch to CCA slide 2. Okay, this is the original and the currently approved site plan. So with the proposed text amendment, we're talking about changing Building A and Building B. The other buildings are all staying the same, and as you know, they're under construction. CCA slide 2, please. So with the proposed text amendments, there would be changes necessary under the site plan modification or special permit modification process. In particular, we're looking to change Building A to mimic Building F, which would be, Building A would have 119 apartments and about 20,000 square feet of commercial space, including a rooftop restaurant located in this area. Also, there's a 130 parking space garage underneath Building A. Also, Building B, which was that pharmacy pad, we proposed into two buildings. We're calling B1 and B2. They would have 32,000 square feet of commercial space, and the pharmacy was 13,000 square feet in the current plan. From a site infrastructure standpoint, the water, sewer, and storm drainage can handle this change in development. There's actually no change in the water and sewer infrastructure, and the far majority of that infrastructure is already installed. From a stormwater standpoint, 3/4 of the stormwater management systems are already installed. There's an area over here built, an area here built, and most recently an area here built. The last remaining area that we would change with this site plan is over in this location.
Would you repeat that and point to the areas that have already been built?
Yep, there's a stormwater management system here built, there's one there built, and there's one here built, and the last remaining system would be over here. And they're, okay.
So the one that's up, yeah, that's on the west side of the entrance?
It's on, so north is kind of up, so it would be on the south side, right in this entrance here, right underneath the entrance.
Okay, okay.
That's where that one's built. Yep. So again, with the proposed text amendment, they're looking to increase the number of apartments from 240 to 348 apartments. Total commercial space would be reduced from about 118,000 square feet to about 84,000 square feet. And the provided parking would be increased from 754 parking spaces to 887 spaces. And again, there's other details that we would go over during a special permit application meeting. But those are the high-level changes that we're proposing as part of this proposed text amendment.
I'm sorry to ask you again to repeat, but would you repeat those numbers for me?
Yep, so we're proposing to go from 240 apartments to 348 apartments. Commercial space will be reduced from about 118,000 square feet to 84,000 square feet. And proposed parking spaces would increase from 754 to 887 spaces.
Thank you.
So with that, I could answer any questions or turn it over to the next person.
Okay. Any quick questions? Okay. Move on then.
Can you put the traffic slides, please? Good evening. My name is Joe Balskis. I'm a licensed professional engineer. I'm also a nationally certified professional traffic operation engineer. I'm also a 34-year resident of the town of Portland. Raised my family here, and I've been involved in this project since 2018, 2017. So 15, excuse me. So it's been a while. So I put together a little presentation on the traffic aspect. So just give everyone a little background. A lot of people here understand what's involved with the project, what we have today, and how we got here. Next. So from an approval standpoint, this all relates to the change in land use. So I just want to give just a quick background on where we are in terms of state approval.
Emergency exits are located to the left, right.
Listen to the police officers, please. We have a fire marshal here as well.
Hey, what about your bag, Bob? Do you want your bag? I'm taking all my shit.
No, that's not my bag.
Well, crazy. You're not leaving your stuff. What's that? I'm gonna take all my crap.
Please proceed to the stairways and exit the building. Do not use the elevators. May I have your attention, please? May I have your attention, please? An alarm has been activated in the building. Please proceed to the stairway and exit the building. Do not use the elevator.
Yeah, so. Yeah, grab your stuff, but we gotta move. Who's laser pointer?
That's Alan's.
optimistic. I took all my crap with me. I'm not leaving my stuff here. Jim said it was the same thing that happened. It was the same thing. Whatever he said, whatever it was, it's the same. He said whatever it is, it's the same thing.
So do they know why the fire alarm's going off?
Yeah, I guess the fire department. Might be. No, it's probably Bob. It was over here, right? Yeah. My neck is
Turn around. Hey, Dan. Wait for a second.
No, it's continuation of what
Not necessarily.
Imagine there are gonna be people left, because they're like, enough, right?
I don't know, looks about the same. Might be a few, but.
I think I'm gonna put in a work.
Certainly less than last time.
Oh, a lot
I
less.
think their public outreach really helped a bit.
Yeah.
People were curious, right?
Can I move, Dan? Not really. Not really.
That's not a bomb, is it?
That's Dan.
Dan? I was gonna say, that's not a bomb, is it? I don't want it near
I'm out
me.
here for this, not Dan.
Yeah.
Yeah.
No. Well, yeah.
I think if it happens a third time, it's,
They,
it should just,
it's,
Is that how you do it? I'll have to read up on my fire alarm protocols.
yeah, it's typical.
Yes, it's been a long time since high school.
I used to be in,
Very.
yeah, because what you're doing is changing your ventilation. You went from winter to summer, and it's usually worse in the fall. Now you're soaking all that dust. You're heating it up, loosening it up. But we used to run into this all the time. It could be that.
geez, you are so, I figured somebody's put the kibosh.
Well, there could be some.
Yeah, I'm gonna wait till he gives me the okay,
But I
make
can
sure
understand how
all
it
the
would be
streaming
that
stuff
sudden
is
change
back
in
online.
temperature.
Whatever
You
has
know,
to
and you're
happen.
going maybe from heat to AC and things.
And then it starts, the whole thing is all jumbled up. Warming it down.
Yeah, then it's hot. Yeah, then, yeah.
Dampers are moving.
I get it. I'm just a little more jaded. I thought somebody was doing it on purpose.
Well, that was my first thought.
Yep.
But why would they crash it?
It's like right before, like at 5:30, And Dan's calling me in a panic saying, they won't let anybody up the driveway, what do I do? I said, you gotta cancel the changes, there's no more you can do.
The EDC presentation?
Yeah, and maybe maybe, people don't know you were required to not listen to them.
Right.
Maybe we should explain that. I don't know. Just to put people's shit together.
Right.
It'd be good if we got productive feedback. I don't know. I guess that probably was our bathroom break too.
Yeah, I took advantage of it.
You did?
I did. Out in the parking lot. There was a nice Lexus up there. I'm not. Okay? We'll just resume the meeting. Okay. Okay, I think we're ready to resume the meeting. The building's been checked out and we're all safe, so we will continue. And I believe we were hearing a presentation on traffic.
So just continue.
Yes, please.
So I was, next slide, please. I was trying to give a little background to kind of how we got here so everyone understands the context of the land use change. And we have, from a traffic standpoint, we have several approvals. We have approval from the Planning and Zoning Commission, which we received from the town a number of years ago. We have the Office of State Traffic Administration approval, which is a major traffic generator certificate. So the state looks at overall the project itself and the impact on all the roadways adjacent to the project. We went through a long process with them, and they mandated off-site improvements, as you see now being built on 66 with the site driveway, as well as on 66 in Main Street. Those are being done right now, will be completed. We also have Connecticut DOT an encroachment permit for those improvements. So from a traffic study standpoint, next slide. What do we do as traffic engineers? How do we do these traffic studies? And it leads up to my land use change I want to talk about. We use the Institute of Transportation Engineers. We use the Office of State Traffic Administration guidelines to prepare traffic studies. And we use engineering practice. Now, I've been doing this for 35 years as an engineer on similar projects like this across the state of Connecticut. So these are the textbooks, the references that we use in our industry to prepare these traffic studies. And you can Google all this information as well if you want. Next. So what is our approved generation, our traffic generation? Whenever we do a traffic study is, what are you generating? How are you generating that traffic? And we have to estimate, for the most part. And we do that using trip generation manual, which I just showed you on the previous screen. And for this project, we are approved for retail, restaurant uses. We're approved for commercial and office. You heard Dan talk about that. And we generate that traffic from those uses based upon the area of the buildings and using our manuals and using state guidance. And that gives us our estimates of traffic being generated in the peak hours. The morning peak hour, we all know the morning peak hour. We know the afternoon peak hour. We have a Saturday peak hour. And from that generation, we then look at the intersections. We do analysis with the existing traffic volume, with the generated traffic volume. What are those impacts? And those impacts drive the improvements that we have received approval for in our building. So that gives you a sense of how we got to where we are today in terms of the traffic. And all this is dictated to us by the Office of State Traffic Administration, as well as the town approval. Next slide. So you've heard some discussion about reduction in commercial, increase in residential. And what does that mean? So from the standpoint of all the studies that we've done on this project, we look at that and say, what's changing? What's changing with this project? What's happening? We know commercial, we know office generates higher peak hour traffic volume. We know that. We know residential generates lower peak hour traffic volume. Those are facts. Across the country, state guidelines, material references, those are facts. So what does that mean for the overall changes proposed as part of this land use? What it means is right there, a reduction. So this proposal for the text change, with a change for residential increase, reduction, is that we are reducing traffic volumes proposed from the approval. Reducing. Okay. What does that mean? That means if we keep it the way it is, if we were to add office, if we were to add commercial, we would be increasing traffic volumes. We're not. We're reducing it. Well, yes. Okay. And the residential.
Excuse me.
Yes.
Can I just ask a question?
Sure.
When you say you're, because that was going to be one of my questions, what is the estimated volume of traffic coming in and out from the site under the existing approved plan versus what is the estimated volume of traffic coming out based on the proposed plan? And I think I heard you say that that residential creates less traffic, less in and out than commercial. And I guess I can think that makes sense. But the question is the timing of that in and out and when that happens. So my first question is, how do those numbers compare, the in and out, and how does it affect critical times? And I think you mentioned that too, the peak times or whatever you had a name for it. So how does that? Can you just provide a comparison of the existing versus the proposed?
Yeah. Can you go to the last slide, please? Last slide of the presentation. So in what was submitted with the application, last slide, there. So it's hard to read. This is a letter that was submitted as part of the record, and the letter details the changes in the land uses, okay? And the bullets there give you the description of the increased residential, reduction office. The net change is 30 vehicles in the morning and afternoon peak hour. So we're reducing about 30 vehicles. Now you say, Joe, is that really a lot? It's not a lot, but the point is it's reducing. By changing the text to allow residential, reduce the commercial, the net change is a reduction in traffic volume. And that's important from an impact standpoint. Are we impacting the intersection with this? Is this going to change? And the facts are no. The facts are no. It's going to reduce traffic volume. So you can say, well, what does that mean? Our previous approval mandated offset improvements per the town, per the state. So we look at this and say, we're changing these we want to change these land uses. What does that mean? If it were increasing our volume, then we'd have to reanalyze all these intersections and say, well, wait a minute, maybe this is not going to work as we thought. Maybe we need to increase the storage for the left turn lane. But the facts are we're having a reduction in traffic volume in the peak hour. So by changing this to the residential, to the commercial and office, we're reducing it.
You said net volume. You said
the peak hour volume is being reduced with this proposed change in land use. So and that's what we look at. As engineers, we look at the morning peak hour, the afternoon peak hour, the commuting peak hour. That's what we do. And that's what everyone sees as we're all driving on the road, is that peak hour. We also look at daily as well, but from the standpoint of an impact analysis, that's what we look at.
I have a question about that, though. For clarification, I understand that less commercial means fewer people coming in and out during rush hour to those commercial spaces. But conversely, if you have more people, more residents in the complex, wouldn't they be leaving and returning from work?
It offsets. It offsets. So, yes, you will have more residential traffic. Yes, I'm not denying it, you are. But that's offset by the reduction in the commercial space you're going to have. So yes, it sounds great. We have 100 more units. We have more traffic. But we have less traffic coming in from the commercial. Okay, so that's where it offsets. If there was no reduction, I would say yes. I'd say to Dan, we're going to look at this. We're going to do a reanalysis of these 7 intersections. We started all the intersections on Route 66. We look at those and say, this may have an impact. We look at that, and we'll give an assessment on that. But we're having a reduction. So that's why we're saying that. I understand what you're saying. Residential, yes, there is an increase in residential. I'm not saying residential is being reduced. We are increasing it. But it's being offset by reduction in the commercial.
Well, how do you define peak hour? Because a lot of commercial spaces don't open at the same time as people leave for work and come home from work, and so I'm wondering how you make that distinction.
It's based on the data. As engineers, we look at the data.
Right.
The data tells us where Route 66, is it 8 to 9? Is it 8:30, 9:30? Is it 7:30, 8:30? So that's all based upon the data we have. So the peak hour is that which is the highest volume on the road during the morning peak, like from 6:30 to like 9:30. There's an hour somewhere in there that we look at and we assess for impact. And the same for the afternoon. So we don't decide. It's decided by the facts, by the data that we acquire.
And does that include both entrances?
Yes. Yeah, we analyze both entrances on Main Street as well as on 66. We looked at both of those. So our traffic study we did for the town, for the state, was encompassing 7 intersections along 66, traffic counts, crashes, all that was done for approval. And then I should also mention the Lower Connecticut Valley Council of Governments did a follow-up study. You can Google that. All right? RiverCog, Route 66 study, East Hampton and Portland. They also did a study, and they concurred with the findings that were in this traffic study. So not just Joe Balskis, engineer, lives in town doing this, also concurred by another entity, the Lower River Valley Connecticut Council of Governments. They did a quarter study from Portland and East Hampton, and they also looked at this area as well, and they concurred. Okay? Thank you.
Okay, thanks.
Hi, for the record, my name is Maura Newell Wan. I'm with 72 Architects in Danbury. Can I have the architect slides, please? Back to the top. Thank you. So this first page is showing the site approval as it stands now with a CVS at the intersection of Marlborough and Main Streets. You can see that the building proposed is surrounded by a parking lot. So basically a parking lot would line the intersection of your Main Street there. The building does not feel connected to the town, and it's not in compliance with the current design guidelines. Next image, please. Coming off the bridge, the intersection of Main and Marlborough is an important threshold, welcoming visitors and residents to the town of Portland. This new corner building is an exciting opportunity to frame the entrance to your town. Image 3, please. The proposed updated design meets and exceeds the recommendations of the Portland Village Design District guidelines. We are introducing a New England vernacular architectural language to this corner. Gable roofs with eaves and proud rakes, structural punched openings with large double-hung windows, and a mix of horizontal and vertical siding. Massing of the building adds rhythm and visual interest to the streetscape. Interlocking gables of varied height and width run parallel and perpendicular to the street. A mix of cladding textures includes clapboard and board and batten siding, together with a panel-style signage board. Architectural shingles and dark bronze gutters crown the building. Charcoal awnings and bronze rainwater leaders add pop, like jewelry accents on the building. Next image, please. The undulating facade interrupts the length of the building to bring it down to human scale as the building faces Marlborough Street and the continuous pedestrian walk surrounds. Next image, please. This charming building addresses both the streetscape and the interior of campus. The interior view is seen from the Hart Jarvis House front porch in this view. Details on the new building include traditional gooseneck lights over the retail signage that complements the architectural design of the building. Awnings over the doors mark the entrances. Large storefront glass wraps the first floor retail spaces, while large, bright windows pour light into the offices above. A center hinge structure contains a stair and an elevator. This hinge serves as a dedicated main entrance to the office spaces upstairs. The architecture itself is used to differentiate between retail and office tenants' client access areas. Meters and utilities are hidden with architectural site walls and landscaping. Rooftop mechanical units are hidden from view by the gable roofs that surround a hidden sunken flat roof area. The proposed building is a good neighbor and offers a significant architectural upgrade and improved interaction with the street. This is a dramatic improvement compared to the as-approved site plan for a CVS and its wraparound parking lot.
May I ask a question?
Yes.
The view that you were just showing, that's actually from the interior of the property, correct?
That's correct. If we go to the last slide, this is the view from the porch of the Hart Jarvis House. If you go back 2 more, this is the view from the intersection of Main and Marlborough. So this building.
How close is that to the street?
It's as close as we are able to be to the property line because we want it to form like a threshold welcome to the town. You could see the street in the foreground here. I don't know the number of feet based on the site plan, but we're at the edge of our property line.
Because it feels more like the edge of a fortress rather than like a welcoming, inclusive embrace to the rest of the town center village district. Whereas when you look at it from the other side, it's very inviting. And so I'm wondering, I'm just trying to envision.
So if I may, to address that point, right here is not, oh, I'm sorry. Thank you. Thank you for letting me know. Right here is not a fully designed space. And so this is an opportunity for signage and plantings, and there would be some brownstone landscaping. This is not developed beyond the architecture of the building to give a sense for what can be done there. But certainly this is not in any way, shape, or form designed from the landscape architect side of things in this rendering.
Right. I wasn't really thinking about landscaping. I was thinking more about the structure itself.
Sure. Okay.
Which is more permanent than the landscaping. I'm just wondering how this includes the rest of the village district rather than excludes it. If this is the back of the store, right? These aren't the main entrances to the commercial properties, right? This is the back door.
Right. We made an intentional decision to take the parking lot off of the street and hide that in the back. That's in compliance with the design guidelines where they're trying to move buildings closer to the street for more of an urban feel, rather than have like the sea of asphalt between the street and the building. So in doing so, the building faces the street and the parking is inside.
I'm sorry, Chairman. I just want to remind everybody, we're not talking about the special permit and site plan tonight. So, no disrespect to anyone, but this is all reserved for a different application, which will be subject to a public hearing on a different night.
Sorry, Carrie.
That's okay.
Okay, great. If I could go forward. You want to say something?
I was just going to say it's 80 feet from the edge of the road.
Thank you.
So have you just
forward, please?
Stopped her from talking?
Thank you.
Okay.
As we reconsidered the redesign of the campus, we were drawn to the incredible views of the steel arch truss bridge, the gentle river, and the expansive horizon of rolling hills. Next image, please. These are drone photos taken at the proposed view from a new restaurant. Next image, please. To celebrate the incredible scenery, we are proposing a new rooftop restaurant overlooking the river. A large interior dining room hosts 174 guests, and a south-facing outdoor patio accommodates up to 72 people. This special and unique restaurant can be a destination for residents, tourists, and out-of-town diners alike. Next, please. This new mixed-use building presents a unique design experience for the town of Portland. Next step. Guests
I'm
enter the
sorry,
restaurant-
Chairman, again through you. We really need to focus on the text amendments and not matters that are subject really to scrutiny under the special permit site plan review. So again, a general overview of what the project is one thing, but to get into the actual architectural details, I think is going a little far afield and could start to confuse the commission on what their objectives are here tonight.
So,
I agree.
okay, so there are some pieces to the presentation that are very important about the historic home. Oh, I'm sorry. There's some future slides here over the next couple of, over the next minute or two that show how this change in approach of going more vertical is both solving a market issue from an economic perspective for economic development and also improving fundamentally the historic restoration scenarios, because that's an important component to this. I was before the the Historic Society last night having an interesting conversation, and we made a couple of slides here that I think are very relevant in the context of historic restoration to see how this plan materially is better than before while solving economic problems that are rendering it feasible.
And again, I want to make clear that a lot of what's been discussed just now is subject to a further public hearing and public comment. And the discretion is with the commission onto how far they want to let you go into what really should be scrutinized under a special permit site plan approval. And I appreciate, Dan, what you said, and I'm going to turn it over to the chair, and it's the commission's discretion as to how far they want to let you go.
Text.
Yeah, I mean, without hearing what you have to say, it's hard to say.
Oh, no, it is. We'd be done with her part by now. If we may just show how the historic restoration goal in the plan of conservation and development is furthered by this altered development approach, which is enabled by the regulation change. That is full stop what we're trying to show.
Which regulation change would you be?
The density change and the language that talks about the building height. So both going from 240 to 350, okay, and the qualification for additional building height being the percentage of commercial on the ground level plus a percentage of higher floor commercial. And so the way that we're envisioning delivering that higher floor commercial, we think is relevant for why we came up with such a proposal. So that's the answer. So if we may, it'll be brief. I can at least give that.
And I naturally speak really quickly, so I'm trying so hard to speak slowly. I will get through these next slides very quickly. We could skip ahead to the next. And let's go one more. Let's get to the site plans. One more, please. Thank you. So this site plan shows the buildings as originally approved. A CVS at the corner and a long, low retail and apartment building along the south side of the site. This configuration faces the town with mostly asphalt at the intersection of Main and Marlborough. And the historic Hart Jarvis House and the rear patio of the Sage House are largely hidden from view. Next, please. The proposed modified site plan shows the new wraparound corner building addressing the street and the intersection in line with the vision of the Portland Design District regulations. The center of campus is opened up and Building A is made more vertical and to offer view experience as well as a celebration of the beautiful historic buildings. One more, please. Okay. This diagram shows the new plan with the currently approved buildings overlaid in red in the foreground. The red triangle, thank you. The red triangle shows the viewing area from Main Street to the historic Hart Jarvis House as approved now. The wider blue triangle, which I appreciate is a little lost on the screen, the wider blue triangle shows a larger and longer view of Hart Jarvis with the proposed site plan and the reconfiguration of the new buildings. The view of Hart Jarvis and the view to Hart Jarvis are both improved with this new design. Next slide, please. This diagram shows a similar overlay with the proposed site underneath and the as-approved buildings in red. This diagram shows the views to the rear dining terrace at the historic Sage House. The red triangle shows the narrow view based on currently approved building arrangements. And the wider blue triangles show the enhanced view of the Sage Terrace as well as the wider view from the Sage Outdoor Dining Terrace. You could see the view into the campus is pinched between the red overlay buildings while it's wider between the taller and building on the intersection. So thank you for your attention as I've walked through these design considerations. We're proud of the proposed buildings and the updated site plan, and we believe this will bring both aesthetic and functional value to beautiful downtown Portland.
Thank you, Maura. So thank you for indulging that. To tie it back to that commercial success, this terrace right here on the outside of Sage for a outside dining experience is massively enhanced with a view shed that's this wide versus looking through the backside of a CVS and the edge of this property. So we view that as a material difference for the leasability of the Sage House as a restaurant. We're committed to that. We put in a $20,000 grease trap to commit to that use on Sage just within the last 3 weeks. So even when you don't necessarily see visible improvements being made to the building itself, we are preparing and working towards a plan so that when we can find someone who shares our vision for the site, then we can hopefully do some business. We had with the Historic Commission, and again, this is to highlight the mandate for the historic preservation and how important that is in town. The front of Hart Jarvis, because it was built to look back towards the river, whereas the others were facing out towards Marlborough Street, you have a very visible situation right now. And just what we wanted to show was how we are improving the visibility of that building when it's being brought back to life in place. And I think this is I hope this is clear enough and conveys just what. Oh, if we can go to the slide that shows that. I'm sorry, I should have had you go back. I think one up. If we're there, we go. Okay, this right here, because we have the columns at this part of that building that are so visible now as you come over the bridge. This is something that will, with this line of sight, because here is Main Street, this line of sight out to Main Street, this is a much larger view shed where you will be able to take in along Main Street the beauty of that building. So as we've gotten deeper into trying to solve this puzzle, as we've tried to show that we've put the time in with the whole team to say, how do we go within the framework of the approval that we have now and just factor in the commercial leasing realities that we have, frankly, spent years exploring and said to the team, what can you move? And the broad theme that I do want to highlight with all of this is We're trying to bring higher quality space. Out here in Gildersleeve, the idea is to build a building on spec that will absolutely increase the odds of it being leased versus a building that is forever so big at the A building that it'll never be able to be built to even hope that someone can come along. So the CVS pad site, we also think, doesn't set the tone for Portland in the way that we can see this alternative would. And you can't figure all these things out day one. Sometimes you have to suffer through it, and you figure out what's working and what doesn't work. And so we're back with something we think works economically. It is a trade for higher quality space from low quality space. I've said it a lot, we don't need a third dollar store in Portland. Yet Dollar Tree's been rejected 5-6 times. They're the only one who keeps coming back and saying, well, we'd like to lease in your plaza. It doesn't achieve the objectives that anybody wanted us to go try to achieve with this redevelopment, which is the headliner in the POCD. So this proposal that we're making tonight is an enabling mechanism to keep the job rolling in this mobilization. I fear that it cannot, phase 3 is not feasible. That's the only reason we're here. If we can keep rolling with the team that's in place, we think that there's a wonderful thing that's catalytic for the entire town. Pomeroy Lodgings, Nordic Spa being an example. If we have 2/3 of a project, the next people who come into town and see a big dirt pile are going to say, well, we'll make another investment once those guys finish up. We complete the mission now, and we don't know what could happen. I am over the moon about 2 things so far outside of what we're doing. Starbucks, that was a big one. They told us no a dozen times over years. And the Nordic Spa, which I never even dared to dream about. But they came into town, they saw a significant investment was being made, and they decided to join in the fun. So we're trying to keep it rolling, and I'm sure there'll be questions, so I'll be up here serving, or at least giving my best answers to them. But that does conclude our presentation for this part. Okay?
Thank you. Yes.
If there are any questions.
Okay, before we open it up to public comment, any questions or comments from commission members?
I have a question. Why is it necessary with the spa coming and their plan to be up and running in a year? Do you feel that the increase in the number of apartments is, why do you feel that that's necessary when we're on the precipice of having a lot more people coming into town for that attraction alone, which will attract more commercial venues into town? And so it's almost like you could be building apartments and cutting off your own nose in a way, because you won't have the commercial space when the demand does come, and I expect it will if they're going to be up and running in a year. That's a very short period of time.
They're not a demand generator for our site. They're just another nice amenity in town. The reason I think they're in support of what we're doing is because the power companies told them they have an issue, and because they think that there will be residents here that will use the spa services, and there are some of their employees that could live there and walk to work. So I think it's a symbiotic relationship that way, but I think they're also, part of their letter was weighing in on what they've seen elsewhere and how in a central business district, you often as a town are trying to get as many people with disposable income to live in that area, and the walking piece of that is a benefit to the entire town because it makes it easier for that retail to be fit up. We are trying to create a situation where that Gildersleeve building is leasable in a way that the building A is not. And so we're It's sort of a combination package without the economic engine, which is something that turns for everybody. It'll spit off $300,000 a year from just that 108 apartments, right? Annually, day one. That's not subject to a tax abatement or deferral of assessment increase. So we're saying that this is good economic development for all parties, and the idea of having the residential be as much as possible in a central business district is viewed by many towns to be good planning. That's.
Thank you.
Other questions before we open it to public comment? Okay, I'd just like to explain one thing. If any of you attended the EDC meeting, I believe it was last week, some or all of what you heard tonight may be repetitive. However, we as a commission were counseled not to attend that EDC meeting and not to watch it on YouTube and avoid all social media. So again, if some of it sounded repetitive, that's the reason for it. So, okay, we'll open up to public comment now, and I guess Dan will read the name, the first name off the list, and we'll start with public comment.
Thanks, Bob. Yeah, if you could just come up and state your name and your address for the record. I already have a second sheet up here for the second round. If you want to speak and didn't sign up for the first round, please sign up. If we only have 5 minutes per speaker, so if you didn't have enough time to speak in this first round, you can sign up for as many rounds as needed. And then once again, it is 5 minutes. I'll be trying to time you. I'll try to give you a little 30-second warning if I can. But please, you're certainly welcome to come back up. I'm not trying to cut you off at all. I'm just trying to make sure everyone who wants to speak can speak. And with that, the person representing the Portland Historical Society, I think Bob, could you please come up?
Can we turn the lights down a little bit? Let's see the person.
Yeah, could we dim the lights a little bit so we can see who's speaking? Thank you. Thank you.
Good evening. I'm Bob McDougall, 14 Kristen Drive. I'm a trustee of the Portland Historical Society. On behalf of the society, I'd like to make the following statement. It has been established by the town of Portland that 3 historic houses which are part of this development are recognized as valuable historic assets. These houses are part of the Marlborough Street Historic District, which is listed on the National Register of Historic Places, and the district includes 12 homes within 900 feet of each other, so right in that neighborhood. The 3 homes that are part of this development are the 1830 Hart Jarvis House, one of the earliest existing examples of temple and side wings Greek Revival style architecture that was imitated throughout the country. This was the home of Elizabeth Hart Jarvis, who became the wife of Hartford gunmaker Samuel Colt, who inherited and ran the Colt empire after her husband's death, making her an unusually important female personage in the 19th century Connecticut. The 1852 Brainerd House, an impressive brownstone mansion with a white stucco finish, was designed by Henry Austin, one of the most noteworthy 19th century architects of Connecticut. And the 1884 John Sage House is a very high quality example of the shingle Victorian style and was built by Jonathan Sage, a renowned ornithologist and an ecologist way ahead of his time. These buildings were also intricately associated with Portland's nationally significant brownstone quarrying and shipbuilding. The Brainerd and Gildersleeve families who lived in these houses are synonymous with the industries that shaped our history. The town of Portland has invested significant human and financial resources to planning for the town's future. This is evident in our town's plan of conservation and development, which includes the Vibrant Communities Initiative that advocates for mixed-use development with the goal of providing goods and services for all citizens of the town that are not readily available in town already, and in that area also, that area also complements our residential housing needs. We were very excited to support the Brainerd Place development as a means of restoring these 3 historically significant houses for reuse in the development. The town generously amended the mixed-use development regulations, increasing the number of residential units allowed from 15 to 240 on the condition that the historic houses would be restored early in the development. We are very disappointed that the restoration was not completed on schedule. We are also very concerned about the requested changes to the plan. They further delay the restoration of the historic homes. They retreat from the full restoration to simply exterior restoration. This is not acceptable and does not fulfill the requirements of the generous zoning amendment. They are inconsistent with the town's plan of conservation and development and the Vibrant Communities Initiative, which stipulates residential development, high-rise buildings be on the southeast end of this development. And the scale of the proposed buildings A, B1, and B2 on the northwest side of the site dwarf the historic houses, which should be highlighted, not diminished on the site. In summary, the community has worked very hard for many years to develop a plan for the development of the town that will preserve its character and rich history while meeting the needs of the residents and creating a downtown with character as unique as our history. If we are not going to follow the plans we worked hard to develop, then we have wasted our time, money, and a great opportunity. Please reject this application and enforce the rules and agreements that are in place. Thank you.
You're not supposed to. I mean, if you want to say something, you could, but I don't.
No, I don't.
I don't think that's something we can control.
Okay.
Okay, next speaker, Dan?
The next speaker is Stephanie Tatro, 165 Great Hill Road. Oh, 65, I'm sorry. Oh, the Y came down in.
I am Stephanie Tatro. We live on Great Hill Road here in Portland. I agree with the previous speaker. I do not support that we go forward and allow 348 apartments on this property. Dan, I have one question. Do I have 5 minutes or do I have one question?
You have 5 minutes. So if you ask a question, I will stop at the end of your question and then let the applicant respond, and then I'll start back up when you ask again. So I'll give you 10 more seconds now that I've been speaking.
Thank you, thank you. So I do have a question for the committee. This application only applies to this project. It does not apply to the whole town because it's not a zoning change, is that correct?
No.
Okay, then how many other parcels in town could be affected if the commission approved this change? Do you know?
Do you want to speak to that, Dan?
Sure. So I did do a memo. I submitted it to the record. I don't know if you want to look at that memo in its entirety and read that for an answer. It's a little nuanced. Right now, a currently assembled parcel, St. Clemens would apply. So the MUD district applies to the B1, the B2, the B3, and the IP zone. And that's all in section 9.17. I can't remember if it's 3 or 4 that goes over the zones that's allowed in. Now, you can assemble a parcel. The parcel needs to be greater than 10 acres, and you need to right now preserve a significant historic resource as identified in our town's POCD in order to get the increased density that is currently allowed. So if you do not restore or preserve rather a historic structure, you have 1 to 3 apartments per 5,000 square feet. The density that's currently allowed is 16 apartments per 5,000 square feet. And one of the changes that the applicant is seeking is to increase that to 21 per 5,000 square feet with a maximum of 350 units in total on site. Now, part of the nuance of the memo is, while St. Clemens is currently the only parcel that meets those criteria as a whole, like Brainerd Place, you can assemble a parcel from multiple parcels. Now, a caveat to that is many of these locations are in areas that lack water and sewer infrastructure. And so it is very unlikely that another development of this size would be constructed without water and sewer infrastructure. It's not impossible, but certainly unlikely as to increased cost. There are also another avenue. If you wanted just density and residential units, there's another avenue that you could take that would be easier for a developer than going through Regulation 9.17 mixed-use development.
Okay, thank you. And in the presentation that was done by Joe Bauskas, the transportation gentleman, in the second bullet, it said that peak retail afternoon hours. And that wording is different than the other three bullets where they talked about peak hours. Is there a difference between peak retail afternoon hours versus peak hours?
Yeah.
Well, I mean, I'd have to keep track of every question.
Okay.
Are you saying you'll keep track of every question, or? I mean, all right.
Okay.
Let me get another piece of paper. I don't know, Bob, how do you want to do this?
I mean, it sounds kind of difficult to keep track of if we don't address them as we go, so.
Yeah, I think we have to address them as we go.
I mean, if you'd like,
Yes.
if you'd like
So-
5 minutes, we can have you come back to that.
I have the answer, I'm just letting them go back and forth, back and forth. She asked the question.
That's the only traffic question I have.
Okay, so I think if we can maybe compartmentalize it to, if you have multiple questions that one person would answer, we'll track those and then the one person get up. But if that's the only traffic-related question you have, then I would say, at this point, you'd answer that one and, yeah. I'm not trying to make things
That's the
hard,
only
I just,
traffic question,
yeah.
yeah.
Yeah, so if there's one that's the only traffic question,
That
then
is.
I would say if the commission would want you to respond, then yes.
Please.
I have no problem answering a question. I just want to make sure it's organized and that we're not going back and forth, so.
No, I understand, but we're.
So if I understand the question correctly, it's a question of retail peak hour. So as I said in the presentation, we look at the peak hour on the street. The data is from the commuting peak hour. We use that in our analysis. That's what we use in our analysis, the peak hour on the street, in the morning peak hour and the afternoon peak hour. Those are the peak hours that we reviewed for the analysis for the prior traffic study approval.
So there's not a, well, my question is there a difference between retail peak hours and peak hours? Because it was clearly different wording in the second bullet versus the other three bullets.
I'm not going to do this back and forth. I'm not going to do it back and forth.
You didn't
So
answer her question.
Ladies and gentlemen, please. Ladies and gentlemen.
The organized civil way to do this is the question is presented, then I answer the questions. We're not going to get in debate and go back and forth, okay? That's what we're not going to do. Dan, this is why we don't do this. This is why we have the questions.
Joe, I understand your frustration.
I'm not frustrated. I'm just saying I want to be organized in responses. I don't want to sit here and go back and forth, back and forth.
I understand. If it's
Okay, that's how it should be done.
If it's one question that's directed to you, we'll go with
I've
the
got
one
it.
question. If
So
the person has multiple questions, like I said, I will keep track of those, and then we will have that person come up and answer.
I'm not trying to be obstinate. I'm just trying to be clear and answer questions correctly and clearly. My point here is that I want to answer questions. I'm not getting a discussion back and forth at the podium. All right? It's not organized. It's not clear for everyone's attention. So the response is that, yes, there is, the data we use is from the morning peak hour and afternoon peak hour. Is there a retail peak hour? Retail usually peaks in the afternoon on a weekday. And usually it's the same time as a community peak hour. Because you're home, you're driving home, you're stopping to get something at a retail shop. That's typically what we see. So my point here is that, yes, the retail peak hour usually is during the normal commuting peak hours we have on our roads. Saturday's different. Saturday we have a midday peak hour, okay? And the travel volumes on Saturdays aren't necessarily the same. A peak on Saturday may be different But the retail does have a peak on Saturday during the midday, between about 11 o'clock and 1 o'clock. Thank you.
Thank you for that clarification. I appreciate that. So the other comment I would like to make, I don't think that this property, given that it has one exit onto 66, can accommodate 350 residential units. I have a significant concern about that. At the last meeting, I was the one who suggested that the town consider there's property between this parcel and Wolcott Lane that could perhaps be used to create an alternate entrance and exit, not accommodating Perry Avenue. Perry Avenue is a residential street, and I'm not suggesting that we try and connect Perry Avenue to Wolcott Lane. I don't think that that would benefit the citizens that live on Perry Avenue. But there is land between Hassan South and Wolcott Lane that I don't know why it wasn't considered to be added to this project to create another entrance and exit. And then you have access to all of the roads that go to the bridge. Or you can go out to Airline and go to 66 out by Farrell's. I just think that, I think we're setting ourselves up for a dangerous disaster by only having one exit from this significant parcel. I think that the other thing that has not been considered is we are talking about all or none here. We are talking about 240 or we are talking about 350. And in Dan's presentation, or one of Dan's team members, he said that they were talking about going from 118,000 to 84,000 square feet of retail space. Roughly the halfway point in there is 100,000 square feet of retail space. Maybe we talk about a compromise where they don't get all 108 apartments. I don't love it, but sometimes a compromise means we all walk away a little bit unhappy. And Dan talked about how he's had these letters that say that we have to educate people about where Portland is and how to bring business. Well, we can all use a little bit of education. Let's educate people about our town and bring these businesses here. We are a great town. There's nothing wrong with educating people about bringing these retail spaces here. And I think that maybe it means that these CB Real Estate has to do a little more work to fill the spaces, but let them earn their keep. Thank you.
Okay, so rolling along. Elwin Giles, Middle Haddam Road.
Elwin Giles, Middle Haddam Road. This story started 11 years ago when someone put a letter in the River East newspaper that showed concern for the condition of the Elmcrest campus. Shortly after that, I founded the Elmcrest Campus Advisory Committee. And for years, citizens of Portland joined me every month to look at solutions for developing the proper development of the Elmcrest campus. I've been witnessing every step of the way for 11 years. The question on the table is the one that the chairman asked at the beginning of the hearing tonight. How do you justify the change from 240 to 350? That's the question. I compliment the developer on progress in the design work for this project. I see clear evidence that his team has come to understand the environment here much more clearly. and I applaud that. Early on in his testimony tonight, he used the word destination. The town of Portland has invested in this project by giving all kinds of assistance to the concept of destination, beginning with the outgrowth of the Elmcrest Campus Advisory Committee's work, the VCI grant for $50,000 to have a marketing study done on this particular property, produced 3 hypothetical scenarios of how the development of the 14.8 acres could be conducted. Dan Bertram and his team took advantage of those studies, and they were well-founded. He hybridized 2 of the 3 to come up with the original proposal that you've seen projected tonight. He was clearly aware at the very outset of all of the ambiguities and the difficulties of development. That's his business. It is not your business. You're being asked to be a developer, because at the end of the day, the only means of determining whether or not the application is justified is to have an understanding of rental terms, leasing agreement, construction contracts. That's not your business. As I said at our last meeting, all of those are subjective views. They're subjective and beyond your expected capacities. I hope you'll give this serious, deep consideration and draw on all of the resources that are available to you. We have a legal team. We have other supporting urban planning assistance that you can use. And I want to call your attention to the fact that the original site plan was contracted to Terry Hahn, a professional urban planner who worked diligently for a long period of time and has a wonderful record that you should review to substantiate the original site plan approval. Thank you.
Okay, moving along. Mike Cleary, 11 Birch Tree Hill Road.
Hey, thanks for having us. And I think the main thing that is on a lot of people's minds is the addition of the apartments, obviously. I understand the reasoning behind using smaller retail spaces to be able to make it more feasible to lease to businesses. I have 2 questions. Does the commission have any thoughts on any of the benefits in bringing in an extra 100 apartments? I heard there's some tax benefit bandied about, but do you know of any other benefits by adding this many apartments to the project?
None that I have heard, but other commissioners.
But is there is a tax benefit apparently?
We're not privy to we're not really privy
Okay,
to.
I heard it mentioned, so I wasn't sure if that was the case.
I think that Mr. Bertram said that it would generate $300,000 per year. Is that correct? Is that what you said?
Yes. Dan, you got to come up to the mic.
The additional apartments that I was referencing at $3,000 a year, right, for 108 would be over $300,000, $324,000 a year. Sorry about that. I'm not used to leaning over this much. Again, what I said was that $3,000 per year is what we project as an average tax. So for the 108 additional apartments, you'd have $324,000 per year that would start right away upon building. To answer the question, why? It's the enabling mechanism to build out the 19,000 square feet in Building A and to build the 32,000 square feet at Building B. Right now, these are hypotheticals, and I'm here talking about some market realities and proposing a solution to address them. So there is a why, and the apartments are the enabling mechanism to build 50,000 square feet of commercial.
My only other question is the rents prices that you said you did a market research, compared some places in Glastonbury and elsewhere. The market is, I feel, is way different in Portland than you'd find in Glastonbury or West Hartford. Do you have any wiggle room in adjusting those prices to be more in line with what Portland would probably support?
These are on the residential rents? Yes. Yeah, okay, sure. So when we look at the demand generators, is typically where are people working? And so it's the commutability from a site to the employment center. So we look at going up to Hartford, down to New Haven. And so there is enough of a base in the area and a shortage of housing that we think that those are the employment centers that support this. It is offered to everyone in the area. Obviously, people working in Middletown, working in Portland are clearly also prospective tenants.
Okay, thank you for that. Next, we have Grayson Hartson, 1 Joel Drive.
Mr. Chairman, thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Speak up.
As we just heard Mr. Beatram say that he needed the 108 apartments in order to continue this project. What that tells me is that he's wanting us taxpayers to unburden him by increasing our taxes. I don't think that's a fair representative of what, as a town, we should be doing. There's many things involved in this that I approve of, but I don't approve of giving him something in order to take and complete the project. The last meeting, he said that if he doesn't get the 108 apartments, he's not going to be able to finance the completion of this new rendition. I don't think that the town of Portland taxpayers should have resolved that. He should have known that going in, and he said he wouldn't be able to complete the entirety. It would only be two-thirds. It would only be two-thirds complete. So I don't concur. Thank you for this.
One of the, okay.
I don't think that was a question. I'm sorry, I don't think that was a question, Dan. Yeah, thank you.
You will get an opportunity at the end when it's all over. But can I just ask anybody who steps up to the mic just to identify yourself for the record? So if you do respond to questions, please just identify yourself.
Thanks, Carrie. Yep. Moving on, Terry Grady, 16 Victoria.
Terry Grady, 16 Victoria Road, and Stephanie caught a lot of the points that I wanted to make, and I do not want to be too site-specific, but I don't have a problem with changing the CVS building. I don't mind that, but I do have a problem with a few other things, and that's time. The time spent on the Vibrant Communities project, the time by the Economic Development Task Force, the time, and thank you very much. I know personally what is involved in what you're doing, the time and effort it takes. the time that you put into analyzing this, the time that the town services put in the initial assessment of needs and statistics, the initial traffic reports, and all of those things. A lot of time went into the decision, and a lot of pain went into the decision. And we saw what the town thought originally when this first came up. Concessions were made. That was a hard fought decision to change and set the number as it was. A lot of effort went into that. So to throw that out the window, to throw their marketing plan out the window that they should have done in the first place and came and assessed, this is what we need, all right, we went with that. But to throw that out and to extend the number of apartments is just wrong. It puts a further strain that people talked about and were afraid of. You're not going to get me to believe that 7 o'clock in the morning that traffic is not going to increase with 300 apartments there. But all of this, it gets down, we made a deal. Stick to it.
Excuse me.
Please, no comments from the audience. Moving along, Ben Serb, 139 West Cotton Hill Road.
Sorry, I'm gonna jump all over the place. Before you start my clock, though, Ben Serb for the record, before the clock starts, somebody behind me pointed out, so I don't want to take credit for this. That's not Perry Avenue on the right side of that screen. If everybody looks at it, that's the gas station, that's the Quonset hut, that's the factory. We skipped a road somehow. This thing got stretched. It's not accurate in any way, shape, or form. That's Pickering Street. What else is inaccurate? I guess I'd start with that as a question. You can start, well, hang on. I guess.
Well.
Hang on. All right, before you start the clock, ready? My name is Ben Serb. My wife, Holly, our 5 children and I are lifelong residents of Portland. We live at 139 West Cotton Hill Road. I am speaking on behalf of approximately 30 properties that I own in the town, consisting of almost all the zones. Sorry, can you not hear me? All right, I'll lean in like Dan did. I have no problem saying I love Portland. I am the owner of multiple companies in the town of Portland and proudly employ many people for almost a quarter century. I volunteered my time on the ZBA for approximately 12 years, Board of Education 7, and Board of Selectmen for 4. I have always wanted what was best for Portland. I have been involved in the Elmcrest redevelopment from the beginning. I have said from the beginning, we get one chance to get this right. Bruce Tyler, your former chairman, God rest his soul, and I did not always see eye to eye, but he had the wisdom and the foresight to help craft our zoning regulations to say, and I will quote, "Under no circumstance shall a mixed use contain more than 240 residential units." I'm not sure if he saw this coming or simply knew our town could not handle more than 240 residential units at this site. The only reason we agreed to a mixed-use development was the positive effects from the commercial component of the development, not the residential being placed in our best commercial site in the town of Portland. Early on in this process, we relied on a study from the Cecil Group that cost taxpayers $50,000. This was used to help create the changes in our zoning regulations we see today. The study recognized that an 80-room hotel would do well at this site and in the town. But at the time, St. Clemens was going to build one, so it was not pursued any further. Sorry, lost my place here. So fast forward almost 10 years till now, we still do not have a hotel, and we need one. This site would be perfect for a hotel with a rooftop restaurant that Dan claims would do well. For those of you that are counting, this is at least the 3rd proposed restaurant at this site. If you ask me, it doesn't look like Dan has any interest other than residential. Every time we have a meeting for a site change, it encompasses less commercial and more residential. If Dan does not want to put a hotel, then at the very least, he should put the alleged viable rooftop restaurant on building F, which is yet to be built, the second residential tower. This would give the town 9,000 more square feet, using his restaurant numbers, of commercial and less residential. The town would still have the opportunity for future commercial development, helping our grand list for many generations. To put this in perspective, 240 residential units is about the same as Bartlett Hill, Grandview Farms, Copper Beach, and the Atrium combined. And the majority of those units are all deed restricted, 55 and older, lessening the impacts on our schools. We do not know how the approved 240 residential units will impact our sewers, schools, police, and fire. One thing is for sure, there will be a cost to the town from this development. The real question is, will it be a detriment or not? The answer is, time will tell. Keep in mind, I'm referring to the 240 units, not the 350. So why would you ever consider changing this rule to 350 before you even know what you will get from the 240? If you get this wrong, the rest of the taxpayers will share the burden of this development. The town has approximately 4,400 housing units, which consists of apartments, condos, and freestanding homes. To put this in perspective, 350 residential units would be approximately 8% of our overall housing. Because none of these on the proposed site are proposed deed restricted 55 and older, it will be a greater strain on our community. Dan, where am I at?
We've got about a minute.
Thank you. All right, I'm going to skip some of this. When figuring out how much commercial development a mixed-use site has, we should not count the restoration of the historic homes, because this is redevelopment, not development. I'm wordsmithing there. I believe the 3 historic homes consist of approximately 15,000 square feet of the overall proposed 83,000 square feet of commercial. So the new would be approximately 70,000 square feet of new commercial on this site. That is the approximate size of a Stop and Shop. In the 8/18/22 amendment to this application, Dan said, quote, "Mixed-use regs call for being balanced. Clearly, end quote. Clearly, a third residential tower is not leaving enough land to be balanced." Should I stop now, Dan? Or?
Got about 20, 30 seconds.
In the same meeting where Dan got permission to build buildings E and F, which is the majority of the residential in phases 1 and 2, most of the commercial into phase 3, Dan said, quote, "We have no right to do any more apartments," end quote. He also said, quote, what risk is there to the commission taking, what risk is the commission taking when they hold the keys to building A, end quote. The next quote, "No one could come in and propose something else for building A that you can't say yes or no." Say no. I'll stop there because I'm going to keep going, so hang on, I'll mark it and I'll come back up. Sign up for another 5. I already did.
All right, so next on the list is Jennifer Sparks, 186 Job's Pond Road.
Hello, and thank you for this opportunity to speak.
Sorry, miss. Just, I know I said your name. And
okay. I'm Jennifer Sparks. I live on Job's Pond Road. I love the town of Portland. I moved here. I lived here for a bunch of years, had my daughter here on Church Street at home. Anyway, then I moved out of Portland and found myself back here again, and I absolutely love this town. So my main concerns are traffic, obviously, because my husband goes over the bridge every morning. I go over the bridge all the time. Fortunately, I don't have to deal with rush hour traffic ever. But when I do, on the rare occasion, it's really hard to get over the bridge. But aside from all that, I don't really see how the town is going to be benefiting from more apartments. I think that the potential for this space could have been profound by the river. We could have had way more green open space. We could have had nice apartments there. We're going to have some apartments there. But I think Dan's intention was always to come and build in our community apartments, because I'm not sure if the good people of the town of Portland have been following the builders' boom across the nation, including in our fine state here in Connecticut. And if you're familiar with the Zoning Enabling Act that was passed in 2021, and also some other laws that allowed developers to come into town and override what the town would like, and that's called A-30G. Dan briefly mentioned that with workforce housing. My question for Dan is Diamarco Group, which is also part of BRT, Dan's company. And by the way, Dan, are you still on the board of the Fairfield Community Bank? You did serve there, right? So you have a lot of understanding about financing and coming into a town and what that means for financing. So I think Dan is holding a carrot of fear over the town to say that he's going to leave a pile of mud on the corner. No, he won't. That is valuable real estate. He is obligated by law to finish the project that he has already committed to. We will find ourselves potentially in a big legal battle with Dan coming in to tell you that now you have to have workforce affordable housing. I hope all of you have been following what's coming out of Hartford, as I've been. There's a great website called 169 CT Strong, which I highly suggest all of you familiarize yourself with, because Dan came here with the intent to build apartments. The apartment industry is multifamily housing industry. It is valued right now in this year, 2023, which, Dan, I'm sure you know, being that you're sitting on the board of the Fairfield County Bank, you still are. Anyway, that is at $881 billion, projected to rise annually by 8.3%, and projected to rise after 2028 another 9-point-something%. I'm off on a few little percentage points there, but almost close to 10% annually. So my thought is that Dan knew and saw Portland as an opportunity. The people, the good people of Portland, will not benefit. We will actually be harmed. I'm concerned as I get into my elder years, I'd like to retire here. Am I going to be able to afford it so that Dan can make $7 million a year? And that's just on residential property. What about the commercial property? And is there a restaurant, Dan? I'm very curious about this restaurant, because if no other business wants to come into town, and I've worked in the restaurant industry as a young person, restaurant industry is really tough. So with Middletown being the restaurant mecca of our state here and right next door to us, why are people going to want to come and sit on a rooftop restaurant here? And in case you haven't noticed, Middletown has a whole bunch of their own Dans in town, building very high rises, which I'm sure are going to be offering restaurant rooftops too for dining as well. So, Dan, did you come here with the plan to just build apartments?
Well, that was
Dan, do you want to wait to the end, or?
Oh, no, I want to hop in. So that was a clear question. I had never heard of Portland. I'd never come here before 2015, and I grew up in Connecticut. I'd been to Middletown, and I have a personal relationship with the seller of the property. That's why I'm here. We came up and we looked at what Mr. Fonda, who was a developer of commercial real estate, had put together prior to our involvement in the property. And it was clear that that plan, which had a very large box, maybe 150,000+ square feet of commercial, and maybe 70 apartments, if I recall, that was the development plan that had been approved by this town. It was very aspirational. It was never going to happen. Also, the town, after that approval was taken through, decided to put 6 buildings on the National Historic Registry, effectively condemning the property from development. So I came into a situation knowing, in some ways, what I was getting into, which is that there are competing interests in this town. The town loves historic homes, okay? I agreed to do one of them. Then I got forced into 2. And then I got forced into 3. So I've got 3 on my plate. There's no question that I don't want to be doing anything past the Brainerd house. I've been very public about that. But I will say this. We came to town with a development plan that was like what got approved, and we were told to go home a few times. I told Fred the only way when we were told the first time that a tax abatement was approved and then pulled because it wasn't executed, and Mr. Serb knows a little bit about that, that the only way I could see to develop the property was with 8-30G. I've been very public all about this all along. It was 530 units that were laid out for the site. The development plan was given to Fred. I said, that's the only way I can see to develop this property. It's one of the best affordable housing sites I've ever seen. They know all the utilities are there. There are no wetlands, all kinds of things. When we pointed that out, then all of a sudden, the revision, the plan that we're talking about trying to change tonight, is what was decided to be attempted. At the time, I said, the one thing I know that's not going to be developed, and Ben likes to talk about this, is the thing I'm showing you, because this is our goal. Our goal was to deliver on the plan. It's much easier for me to not be here talking about this in the context of your town. I'm here, the crew that I came up here with is here because we have a skill set to do large-scale development. I have a personal relationship with Fred Hassan. 2 of those buildings are named after the guy because he has been like an uncle to me my entire life. I'm trying to complete this job while he's still alive. He's 86 years old. That's my motivation. I'm here to say, here's a way to develop it. I did not start anything that can't be wound down in a controlled fashion. So that means the 3 historic buildings, those will happen. The beach building, which is what the Starbucks has, and then Hassan North and Hassan South. We're here because this is a difficult site. I took on something that was difficult. I tell my kids one thing, and I'll stand down because my integrity is being challenged here. But I will say this. Leadership is disappointing people at a rate they can absorb. I'm here saying some bad news. Portland has aspired for a level of commercial that I can't see how to deliver. And I'm one of the more creative developers in this state. That doesn't mean it can't be done, but I am saying that we can complete the stuff I just said we can complete, and we will. And we will have a shingle out in front for the rest of the job, because it is this commission's decision, okay? They can say, let's make a change and fulfill a broader objective, which is to stimulate growth in the town of Portland. If we look at this site as one bullet and one gun ever, right? I think it's a narrow view. But I can complete this job at the level of what we've started, and we can all hope. Hope is not a strategy. But I'll hope with you. If we can't do anything, then we'll just see what happens. But I don't know what else to say other than I'm here trying to. That Starbucks building is called Beach because I'm actually attached to that beech tree at the entrance, okay? I'm attached to the Brainerd house. I'm becoming attached to the Hart Jarvis house. That's why I'm showing the view shed differences. And Ben, I'm embarrassed by what you pointed out. On the right side of that property, right, that the overlay is off. So it does look right to me that that's not right. But it's not changing whether or not you have a much larger view shed between the proposed A and B versus the old A and B. So from the standpoint of my heart and soul is in this job. I would like to take care of my Uncle Fred. This is not a money grab, okay? This is complete a mission, and we're trying to do so, and we'll do more rounds here, and I'll come up and keep answering the questions.
Okay, moving on. And I'm sorry if I pronounce your last name incorrectly. Alfred Yaney? Excuse me. Excuse me. Could you come up to the podium, please?
Microphones are needed for the recording and live stream.
Excuse me. Nobody on the live stream can hear you unless you speak in the mic.
I'm sure they can hear me. Hey, all out there in YouTube land, can you hear me?
I guess, sir, if you would please identify yourself and address, please, again, for the record.
My name, again, is Alfred W. Yaney, and I was using that W long before George come along. I live at 12 Grandview Terrace, Portland, Connecticut. I hate New England, I hate Connecticut, but I chose to live in Portland. My kids love it here. They go to the schools here, they think this is the center of their universe, and I can't take that away from them. But now I see a developer that wants to destroy that. And I know you've got good intentions with this bait and switch, but I know what's going on, like the young lady over there said. What's going on in this country right now is disgusting. Y'all are getting played. In 2012, Obama and the government repealed the Monk-Smith Act, making it legal for your media, your newscasters, to lie to you, to get on public TV and tell you that Russia is still communist. I'm sorry, but I was in the United States Army from 1979 to 1983. I happen to know that the Soviet Union fell. We won. Actually, right now, I'm thinking they won.
I'm sorry, sir.
But,
is this relevant to
yes,
to
this
the
is very
topic?
relevant. Because I'm speaking now, thank you. I interrupted him at the last meeting. He interrupted me with that little speech he gave in the middle of the questioning. I let it go because I believe in fair play. But here we are. Now, in the military, I worked for a 3-star general in charge of 3 countries worth of nuclear missiles in his headquarters. So I know how to look for information. I know what's going on in the world. When that young lady talked about the finance world, what did she say? What did Klaus Schwab say of the New World Order? You will own nothing and be happy. Well, that's what they're doing. They shut off our pipeline. When energy is expensive, humanity flounders. When energy is cheap, we flourish. How can we aspire to go to the stars when the elites want to drag us back down to slavery? Can anybody explain that to me? Now, here's what's up with these apartments. If you've been paying attention to our southern border and the massive treason being committed by our government right now, there's over 20 million men of military age in this country that do not belong here. Over 100,000 of them confirmed from China. I haven't watched TV news in 20 years, but I can assure you, my first job stuck with me. I know how to get the information, and I can bring the receipts. All you got to do is pay attention. I strongly suggest you get on to watching YouTube videos and Rumble and find the newscasters that are telling you the truth. These people are lying to you, and they're committing treason. And how many times a night do you hear ambulances go down 66? Did you ever hear that before? Did any of you ever hear that before?
Sir.
What changed? I live right behind FT40 on Grandview Terrace. I love my little quiet street. Once in a while you hear an ambulance going up to the atrium because they're elderly, and I'm going to be there in a few years. But now I hear ambulances 3 or 4 times a night. My ex-co-workers in Pratt and Whitney are terrified because now they're having heart attacks. Coroners are finding plastic blood vessels, plastic blood clots. They're not blood. It's not human DNA in their blood. The drug companies are now finally being exerted, but they poison people. When are y'all gonna wake up? Seriously. They're gonna get paid $125 for every bed for every illegal alien they put in an apartment. And coming from Florida, you can live one family
30 seconds,
or
sir.
so many bathrooms, but they're gonna get between $15,000 and $20,000 per unit. That's the deal. That's the money, and that's what you follow when you want to find the truth. You follow the money. Look at what's going on across the nation. Halliburton was run by Dick Cheney, but the major stockholder was the Bush family. The same thing with BlackRock. I am with them.
Sir. Excuse me, if you'd like to speak again, you can sign up. Moving on, Karen Mazza, 13 Perry Ave.
That's okay. That's okay. We all get our 5 minutes. It's all right. Good evening. I'm Karen Mazza from 13 Perry Avenue. A lot of the things that I came up here to say were already said to some degree, but I just want to emphasize a couple of those points, and I do have a couple of new points. The town agreed in the original agreement, and it was a very difficult decision for all of us. We agreed to a development, a mixed-use development with commercial and residential that contained 240 residential apartments. This is the biggest residential development in the town to date. We're going from nothing that even close to that size as a single development to 240 apartments. And we're now being asked, before that is even built, to shift that commercial to residential ratio to favor more residential to the tune of 350 apartments. I heard one person say an extra 108. I heard another one say 110. I heard 350. I heard 2 less than that. I don't know exactly what it is, but it's about 110 apartments more than what was already approved. One of the reasonings the developer gave was the email that he keeps reading from the marketing company. The marketing company, I have to imagine that as someone working with that amount of money, building these impressively large developments, that you know what you're doing, obviously, and I would think that before you sink that much money into developing a parcel, you would have done your own market analysis of what this town could support in the way of commercial development. It's not news to anybody that we're a niche little town across the bridge from the big city of Middletown. That was not an unknown before the original plan was proposed. So I really question the reasoning that all of a sudden our geography can't support the amount of commercial that was originally agreed to build. Our geography hasn't changed. Our proximity to Middletown hasn't changed. What has changed is the residential market is booming. So I question that being cited as a reasoning for the change in residential to commercial ratio. Another point that I wanted to say is the cars. I heard Ryan Curley say with 350 apartments in a previous meeting that would yield 400 residential cars, but there was a little bit of car math happening there. Those 400 cars only counted 2 cars per 2-bedroom unit and 1 car per 1-bedroom and 1 car per, and you can go back and look at the tape. I wrote these down as he spoke. 1 car per studio. We all know that 2 people could live in a 1-bedroom and have 2 cars. So I think that 400 extra residential cars at 350 apartments is lowball. I do think you will have more than that. I mean, 2 people can share a 1-bedroom, and you'll have 2 cars. I also think there's a little bit of engineering math with the traffic and the peak hours. I think that most commercial stores, retail, don't open until 9 or 10 a.m. I live on Perry Avenue, which is up there-ish, I see that traffic backing up at that light, and that happens from when I leave at 6:15 a.m. And if I leave later because I have a delay or something, I see that traffic happening up until 9 and through the 9 a.m. hour. There's no commercial traffic at that hour. So these 400, and that's the low number, more cars will be entering if they work a day job in that morning peak hour. If they work second shift in that afternoon peak hour, they would be joining that fray out there on 66. The other thing that I really, really want to caution the commission against, and this hasn't even been spoken to, your directive to the developer at the last meeting when his presentation and bells and whistles got shut down, was you were very specifically asking him to tell you how this change in text amendment would benefit this town. He's only spoken to this particular development, but you're being asked to change how much?
You got about 30 seconds left.
Thank you, I appreciate that.
Yep.
You're being asked to change the text to allow this kind of development for any future developer. I know you cited a memo and developable parcels. I live on the east side of Perry Avenue, and the west side of Pickering behind me is a potential developable rectangle just beyond this development. If you change that commercial to residential ratio, someone can come and offer to buy us out, develop that parcel at this increased ratio. And now you've not only got 350 apartments on this parcel, you're gonna have that ratio on the next parcel, all on 66. One very quick thing. He said smaller commercial was more marketable. There's no reason you can't carve that out into smaller pieces of commercial in that same building. Thank you.
Okay, moving on. And again, I'm bad at reading last names. So Linda Yo, or I'm sorry. Okay, cool.
Hi, Linda Yo, 84 High Street. I have a question for the commission, and I apologize for my ignorance. I should be more informed about this. I was wondering if you all were considering other evaluations for retail development other than what the builder is providing, just as a comparison. And also, as far as traffic goes, I live on High Street. Getting out of High Street onto 66 by the Cumberland Farms in the morning is problematic. I notice a lot of cars coming from East Hampton and Hebron and Colchester, and also on Main Street coming through from Glastonbury and farther north. There are a lot of people passing that corner daily to go to work and coming home from work. And I'm wondering if that figured into anybody's calculations. But I do apologize for my ignorance, and thank you for your time.
Before you leave the podium, Linda, could you just repeat your question, please, about the question to the commission?
I was wondering if the commission is entertaining any other evaluations for the retail viability of the development.
Other than what's being
Does that
offered
make
by the
sense?
developer.
You mean whether we've looked into that?
Chantel and Victoria, could you just talk closer to the mic? You guys are sitting back, so nobody's hearing you.
Well, you're asking whether people on the commission have looked into the viability ourselves on our own?
Yes.
I have not.
No, I think we can say that's really not our charge to go down that path.
So you're just relying on the developer?
we're evaluating his request for change, his application. That's the extent of our involvement at this point.
Yeah, so we would have to like have a study done, I think. Is that what you're referring to?
Well, they had a study done.
Are you referring to the VCI report that the town did back in 2015, or are you talking about what their marketing group put together?
A marketing evaluation.
Yeah, so no.
I mean, I don't know technical stuff. I can't quote chapter and verse.
Yeah, so
I'm just wondering, are you you're trusting these people? They're telling you something, and that's what you're going by.
So one thing I can tell you is the applicant needs to be truthful. If they are not truthful, that is an illegal issue.
I'm not suggesting that they're not. I'm just asking if you have a comparison.
Yeah, we do not have a market study ourselves.
Thank you.
Yeah. Was that the traffic question you were looking to answer, or?
No, it had to do with the study. People who've looked at Portland. I can talk about it in my closing remarks.
Okay. We have one more person in round one, and then we're going to have a couple Zoom questions, and then we'll kind of have to track time in terms of what we can have for future questions. So without further ado, Dick Lawton, 331 Cox Road.
I'm Dick Lawton. I live at 331 Cox Road, Portland. I grew up in Portland. I just want to start with the traffic congestion. About 2.5 weeks ago, I don't normally drive up. It was like early afternoon. I don't normally drive up from Main Street to 66. But when I was going there, the traffic was backed up all the way from High Street to past that new light that's going to go up. The light wasn't even working, and traffic was backed up past there, heading in the east direction. So I'm just wondering what that extra 100 plus apartments is going to do for traffic. I think there's already going to be a problem. I mean, you can do traffic studies, and you can maybe manipulate the facts however way you want to, but just going up the street there it was pretty bad. I also want to say that you've got a big traffic choke point going over the river, the bridge. You've got 4 lanes basically narrowing down into 2. I don't know if people remember, but not so long ago, they refurbished the bridge, and that was down for what, a year and a half? And during that time, that was a real nightmare. And, you know, you can paint the bridge over, you know, as many times as you want, but it's not going to change those four lanes into 8 or 6, you know, until the DOT decides they're going to put in a new bridge. I just think this whole thing is, you know, they're trying to develop a new Middletown here, and I don't think personally I don't want to see a big development put in. I mean, it's already approved for the most part, but I don't think we need to increase to 100. I don't think we need to increase to 108 or 100 new apartments that weren't approved to begin with. I think that you know, what they've got, they can deal with. Now, as far as those extra people that are going to be living there, if there are additional people, there are also people that you know, vote, and when it comes to voting, like regarding town issues, you know, they don't pay the taxes directly. They're not intertwined with the town. maybe they'll want, you know, premium, you know, premium things out of their taxes, but, you know, we're gonna be footing the bill as far as what we pay for. We make the decisions. We don't need people that are, you know, what I consider transients, making our decisions, what we're gonna put our money into. As far as the proposed building there, the new building design, you know, maybe they should consider making it, you know, like a park for the people that live there, you know, for the pets, their animals, or even more parking for that matter, instead of having to park under the buildings and probably paying premium prices for parking under the buildings. I just think it's not a very good idea, this extra 100 apartments. Thank you.
Bob, but before we move on, I don't want you to wait 40 minutes. Could we take a couple-minute break? I need to use the bathroom.
Yep. Okay. So we'll take a 5-minute recess, please.
You have very pretty handwriting. Thanks. You know, the kids today, they're not even gonna learn cursive. I know. Is that ridiculous? Don't you think it makes you write faster? Yeah. Because you're not picking your pen up all the time?
If you want to know what.
I don't get it. I don't know what this world is coming to.
It's a 2-letter answer, not a 3-letter.
Okay, if we could get order in the room, please.
Excuse me, everyone. If you could please settle down. We only got half hour left. We already have too many people for questions, so.
Yep. So we did some quick math, and it looks like we're not going to get through everybody tonight, so we'll need to plan for probably another round based on the amount of people who wish to speak, so.
Yeah, so we have a person on Zoom who has a question, and then somebody who typed some questions in the comment, and then we'll try to make it through as much of round 2 as we can. We are limited on time. I will preserve the list from round 2. Those are the people that we will start with at the next meeting, but again, we'll have more rounds of speaking if, by the next meeting, you have something else to say, you'll have the opportunity. So with that, I guess, Dylan, the first person on Zoom who had the question?
That would be Mara G, and we are muting them now.
Was that Mara you said, Dylan?
Yes.
Okay. Could you, Mara, when you get on, could you just state your name and your address for the record, please?
Yeah, Mary Juliana, 280 Middle Haddam Road.
Oh, Mary. Okay, Mara.
My question, Dan, is has my letter to the Portland Planning and Zoning been submitted to them? Is that something that you can read or not?
So your letter has been submitted to the commission as part of the record. They have it. We weren't going to read all of the correspondence that was submitted to the town word for word. We were going to read that you submitted a letter in opposition to the project. Now, if you wanted to expand on whatever was in your letter for the public, you certainly could do that, but the commission has your letter and they have reviewed, they are reviewing it.
Okay, the only thing I wanted to add, although it's been mentioned in the letter, no one seems tonight to have spoke anything about spot zoning, which I feel very strongly that this is, and by definition, spot zoning is when zoning is changed to accommodate a single individual or a single corporation, and not necessarily for the benefit of the town. And I see that as that's exactly what would happen here if, in fact, the commission decides to go forward with the amendment to these zoning regulations. Thank you.
Thanks, Mara. What was your street number again?
280.
Okay. I knew it was very close because,
yeah.
Yes. Well, good to hear from you again.
Okay, thanks, ma'am.
Okay. Okay. And Dylan, if you could just read the chat box questions, and then I can take them down, and then I can try to direct them to the appropriate party, or Bob can.
Okay, I do not have a street address for this person or last name.
Is that okay?
So we don't have any identity at all?
We just have a first name, Dylan?
Yes, Marie.
Marie? Did you say Marie?
Yeah.
I would say go ahead and.
Okay, go ahead, Dylan.
All right, it says, I do not support this project. I agree we should hold off on and continue to educate commercial businesses on what a great area and opportunity this would be, rather than giving up. The additional traffic in the already hazardous area to drive in is crazy. People drive like nuts in this town, some without licenses and registrations and insurance, which the town chooses to do nothing about. Do we have the capacity in schools to handle the added number of students? Construction in this area is silly to begin with, but I, among many others, would prefer to have shops, restaurants, and services added to this town versus apartments, and an additional 350 to 700 plus vehicles added to this intersection. Have to disagree that 350 apartments will create less traffic than a handful of businesses with a handful of employees. And look at Main Street and the destruction of some of the beautiful homes that are already apartments. It's disgraceful and an embarrassment to our town. Who would be responsible for maintaining the integrity of this site? End of comment.
Yeah, Dylan, could you cut and paste that and send that to me, or I can come up and take a picture of that, just so I can put that into a Word file for the record.
Absolutely.
All right, cool. Thank you, Dylan.
And then there is one other person who is in the queue to speak from Zoom.
Okay, yeah, absolutely.
So we will unmute PWILLSE next.
And again, the speaker, could you just state your name and your address for the record, please?
My name is Peter Wilsey, W-I-L-L-S-E. I live at 62 Jobs Pond Road in Portland. And full disclosure, I'm also the building official. And I'd like to make the record, correct the record. Back in February 2023, I received 2 permits to renovate the Brainerd House and the Sage House. I had to reject both of them because they did not meet the International Existing Building Code under Part 12 for the structural, historic buildings, because the historic buildings, depending upon how you renovate them, would need to comply with the existing 2022 International Building Codes. The Sage House, if you were on the 2nd floor and you wanted to come down to exit, you would have to go into the 1st floor. And if you had a fire on the 1st floor, you would not be able to exit. The second, with the Brainerd House, the first revision that was sent to me back in February 2023 was to have tenant storage down in the basement. 1st floor was going to be the changing houses, showers, a kitchen, and some other what we consider assembly occupancies. And on the 2nd floor was going to be an upper exercise room, a lower exercise room, a TV, movie room, a yoga room, and a library, which all constitutes an assembly occupancy. Unfortunately, the building code requires 2 exits on an assembly occupancy, and they only had 1 stair. So I had to reject it. A year later, they came back with another revision, and they turned around and said, in the Brainerd House, the 2nd floor was going to be co-workers' lounges, which is not defined by the building code. And I asked them what that meant, and they said, oh, it was so people could work remotely. And I said, okay, that is still part of the assembly occupancy because they're saying it's considered a business, but in order to consider it a business, it has to be incidental to another occupancy, which they did not do. Finally, 4 weeks ago, we sent mods up to the Connecticut State Building Inspector to have them respond back as to what's going on and what the changes are. And we have not heard back. Now, talking personally, I heard Ben said, okay, we need to, instead of having this apartment, have an 80-room hotel. Well, a hotel has transient people. Transient people do not necessarily go and do stuff here in Portland. They are here for business and they will move on. They will not necessarily stay in Portland and work with the people. And as the previous person who was up at the podium turned around and said, apartment renters do not vote. Well, okay, then that means we have a lot of apartments here in Portland where the residents can't vote. Oh, not necessarily. They are residents and they are allowed to vote. And let's go back. Everything was done 11 years ago, prior to COVID. Things have changed. I used to work for a commercial property insurance company up in Hartford. We had 12 floors of 100 Constitution Plaza. Prior to me being before COVID, we had about 5 of those floors where there was nobody in there. They were vacant. So what do? Now that COVID hit, people are working remotely. So I'm sure that the occupancy of those buildings are way less. Now I want to ask the audience, how many of you folks go around and do your shopping on the internet? Amazon, Walmart, Target. If you do, you're not supporting any store. So, we need to have more commercial space. How many of you turn around and are working remotely? Oh, okay. How many, if you drive down Middletown or any other city, how many storefronts have paper in the windows because the occupancy is not there? There is a move afoot to have high-rise offices that used to have businesses in there turn around and be residential because they cannot rent out the office space.
30 seconds, Pete.
And, what's that?
30 seconds.
All right, and this all was done 11 years ago, before COVID, and okay, in 11 years, have you changed? Has everyone stayed the same? Thank you.
Okay, so that is the end of round one for questions. I have 9:12, so maybe 2 more people, and then...
1 or 2 more people, sure.
Dan, do you want to just respond at the end of public comment when we get through all the rounds next time? Okay, I just wanted to check, okay. So with that, we have a hard stop that we have to be out of here. 6. So probably 1 or 2, depending on, how we go. If you are on the list, we will start with your questions at the next meeting. So you're not going to get kicked down the order. You don't have to sign up. What I'll do is I'll hold on to the sheet. I'll indicate where we stopped. And then, you'll have first crack next time. And then, again, we can have more rounds of questions. So with that, Mike Nadolski, Blackberry Ridge Road.
47. Spoiler alert, I have a very different perspective from this project from everybody else who has spoken so far. My name is Mike Nadolski. I live at 47 Blackberry Ridge Road. I'm a 19-year resident and property owner in town, so that probably makes me a newcomer. But I also chair Portland's Economic Development Commission, so my comments tonight will be primarily economic-based and how I see the economic impact of the proposed changes, okay? So as a starting point, I think there's a general consensus here and across town that we need more commercial development. Why? Continuing inflation, rising energy costs, unfunded state mandates. All of these are driving the operating costs of the town up, right? Paying our teachers, plowing our roads, equipping our first responders, those costs are going up and up and up. And if we don't expand the tax base, that's going to make the property tax for residents unsustainable. So the critical question is, how do we grow the tax base? How do we solve this problem that we know we're all facing? Okay, based on past history, my 19 years here, the town's demographics represented right here in the current economic state that Connecticut is in right now, we're not going to be able to significantly grow the tax base without new catalysts coming to town. It's just not going to happen, okay? You need proof. Walk down Main Street today. What do you see? Vacant buildings, vacant storefronts. The bank building on the corner of Waverly, how long has that sat open? The Victorian, the paint peeling off the side, dark every night. Many other storefronts vacant on our main business district. That should be unacceptable. We shouldn't accept that. So what's the solution, right? Today, Portland doesn't have a problem for the lack of commercial space. We can't fill the commercial space that we have, right? So how do we solve it? What's the solution? The solution is it's not building more unutilized, empty, vacant commercial space in our prime development spot. How is more open, underutilized, unwanted commercial space going to help build the vibrant town center that we all talk about in our plan of conservation and development? It's not. It's going to have the exact opposite effect, okay? So
We need to accept that in the post-COVID world that we're living in now, as the last speaker mentioned, Amazon rising, online retailers rising, retail shopping has fundamentally changed. It ain't coming back, right? We need to accept that the original plan, as much as we fell in love with it, it's just not gonna work today. The retail market has fundamentally changed. We need to recalibrate and we need to readjust for the world as it is today. As it is today. We can't cling to a past that no longer exists. That's just foolish. Now, I'm a corporate attorney. I've practiced law in Connecticut for many years. I'm now a business law professor in the economics department at the College of the Holy Cross. We teach fundamental economics to our students, and every business professional knows this. Commercial investment follows demand. Let me say that again. Commercial investment follows demand. And the simple, undeniable truth is that today, Portland doesn't generate sufficient demand. Our town center lacks the critical mass of people and activity to attract commercial and retail development. Empty buildings, it makes sense. We could pretend otherwise. We could love the town as much as we want, and I do love this town. I raised my family here. But the hard truth is, the real truth is that the only time that our center is vibrant is trick-or-treat on Main Street and lighting the Christmas tree. Maybe you throw in the Memorial Day parade, but that's it. 3 times a year we have a vibrant town center. That's not what we want. We want vibrancy in town. How do we get there? I hate to say it, we gotta add residential units. And I think residential units in a pedestrian-friendly environment in the middle of our business district helps us attract, helps us create the demand that we lack. I think we should encourage and welcome new residents to our town center. We should, more importantly, welcome their wallets and pocketbooks. Every new apartment translates into new consumers spending money at our existing businesses and encouraging new ones to open.
30 seconds, Mike. Sorry, 30 seconds. Sorry.
Listen, we get a choice to make. If you like everything the way it is, reject the proposal. If you want a lifeless, empty town center with vacant storefronts, empty buildings, reject the proposal. You want to keep the tax base nice and narrow, and you okay paying higher taxes, reject the proposal. But if you support broadening the tax base, breathing new life into the town center, then we gotta change, right? I recognize change is hard for people. It's hard for everybody. It's kind of a natural reaction to something that's different. But we can't let fear of change blind us to objectively considering what we risk to gain and what we risk to lose. And we do risk to lose things if we don't adopt this proposal. The risk of losing a big catalyst for expanding our tax base, the risk of sending a message that Portland is hostile to new development, the risk of depriving our existing businesses on Main Street a new customer base, not supporting our own businesses. And as Dan pointed out in the letter from the Nordic Spa, we risk losing the synergies between Brainerd Place and Nordic Spa, development projects that right now bookending our town center and could be huge catalysts for the vibrancy that we want in our town center. We should be encouraging that and not taking actions that potentially stall either one of those developments. The bottom line is we've got an opportunity here. We ought to grab it with both hands. We ought to support the town center. We ought to support our existing businesses. We ought to fill those storefronts.
Easy, 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 easy. Okay.
Thank you.
Okay. Okay. We only have 10 minutes left, so I would think this is the last speaker. Or Bob, is that what you want to do?
I think so, yeah.
Okay. So we do have more speakers after this for next time. Again, I will preserve your name so that you go first. So Ben Serb, 139 West Cotton Hill Road. And then at the next meeting, and then we can discuss that before we adjourn, what the date of that will be, will be John Neiman of 2 Gloria Heights. So I apologize, John. I'm sorry you got the last person. I don't know, but go ahead.
Don't start the clock yet. Ben Serb for the record, West Cotton Hill Road, Scarlet Serb, my number 5. Normally I don't do this because I feel like it helps the developer, but I couldn't disagree with Mike Nadolski more, and I understand why he came up and said
Can you
this.
speak closer to your mic, please?
Sure. I understand why he came up and said the things he said, because at the 8/18/22 meeting, he was one of the few that stood up in front of this commission and told this commission, we need a driver. We need a driver. You need to allow all 240 residential units to be built so we can have the driver for all the commercial development. Well, where's the driver? I guess you got to flip now. Honestly, it sounds like you're anti-development, quite frankly, not part of the economic development. If that's the mindset that you have, that there's very little coming, well, then that's what you're going to get. At the end of the day, there's plenty of towns that are building new commercial in an appropriate manner, and what was originally proposed, we all got on board with for an appropriate manner. So critical mass was the 240. That's how we concluded what was going to be needed as far as residential. That's the critical mass that was needed for this development. 240, commercial, approximately 118. Anyway, I'll speak quickly. I just know we will not have sorry, this is another, I'm in the middle, Dan quotes. I just know, this is Dan quote at a meeting, I just know we will not have the right to do anything but what we have laid out, end quote. I don't blame Dan Bertram for trying, because he will do what is best for himself. I urge this commission to please do what's best for our town and vote no. I was one of the 7 Board of Selectmen that crafted a fixed tax agreement for BRT, which he received after the project was approved. He has not met the requirements to receive it. BRT, to be perfectly clear, has either breached their agreement or, at the very least, has multiple defaults. When the default letter goes out, he will have 60 days to cure these defaults. One of the defaults is he will have to put this back into a 2-phase project from 3 phases, which he submitted. I think we should not negotiate until this is returned to 2 phases. Given the town protection moving forward, this board should let the elected Board of Selectmen know the concerns that the majority of this commission, the majority of this commercial is in phase 3 and might not get built. This way, any future tax amendment can work to put protections back in for the residents of Portland. To be very clear, the town is in the driver's seat. If BRT wants some sort of tax abatement, they will need to build 240 residential units, restore the historic homes, and the proper amount of commercial. I'm going to not read the rest of this because I'm not going to have enough time, but what I want to get into is at some point there has to be give and take. And I can respect one thing, and I'll say it, maybe the commercial needs to be reduced slightly at this point, but to then give up the potential for future commercial in the future is ridiculous. What needs, and just for the record, Dan pointed to the map. You left out Building B, Dan. That is currently in phase 1, and the foundation is supposed to be in. And I understand as a community that's not the look we want, so then let's work together. But that building's supposed to already be poured. That's part of phase 1. You're not going to get the COs on E and F, which is the majority of the commercial, until something on B is done. So to be clear, we can work on that corner. What needs to happen is make it a 1-story building. I forgot who, I think it was Victoria, pointed out that it was too tall. You have approximately the first floor, I believe it's a footprint of 16,000 square feet, but it seems uneven because of the mezzanine. So I'm going to assume it's somewhere around 16,000 per floor. Build it 1 story, put that other 16,000 back into A. We can work together on getting A completed, but once it's gone, it's gone. Look at this map. There's nothing left for us to use as an area. So I got a few different things I want to go into. For the attorney, and this can be answered afterwards, this, according to his statement, in my opinion, you're describing spot zoning when it does only apply to one site. What I want to do for the traffic guy, since he's here, Joe, for the record, I lived on the same road as Joe for many years. He lives on Joe's Pond Road. There's 2 studies, and you're quoting, it's not going to have any more cars, correct? That's, it's going to be a reduction is what you said. But the problem I have a memo here from September 11th, 2020 that was submitted to this commission. In this memo, it was used for a parking reduction. So they were trying to prove to you why they didn't need as many parking stalls as they had. And in this memo, it states, Some of the apartment spaces during the day will be available for the office spaces when most residents are at work. That's how we got the reduction on the site. So if that's the case, you can't then use the calculation saying the office spaces are going to be peak generating time, because they conflict. It either didn't match the waiver statement, or it doesn't match the traffic study. It can't be both. So that would be my, I'll pause for a minute. He can answer that question. I still have my 30
You
seconds.
got-
Thank you. Thank you. I'll pause.
15 seconds, so.
I don't have the memos referencing, but I can tell you, Ben, and you should know this. Parking does not mean traffic, okay? That's a fact. Parking spaces do not mean traffic generation. I'll get that memo, look at it, respond next time, but that's the fact. Parking does not mean traffic generation. You can't mix the two.
Thanks. Yeah, Ben, we really only got 10, 15 seconds here.
Give me 1 second. Don't start the clock until I finish.
I don't mean to cut you off, but I'm sure you'll be back up next time, so.
I'm not sure we have time enough to start a new,
Yeah, you know
new
what?
topic here.
Yeah,
I'll end it,
yeah.
I'll end it there.
Thanks.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you.
I don't think we have time. Oh, did you want to make a closing statement, or I thought you were waiting till next time?
Yeah, no, I wanted to make a response this evening, but if that's not in the cards.
If you want, you could, maybe you can start next time, and then I'll jump into the questions. Would that be okay?
Well, I wanted to offer something that we would come back with, but.
Okay, what, like,
Meetings, that's all.
okay, 30 seconds?
Yeah,
Okay,
oh, absolutely.
okay.
30 seconds. Somebody stole my thunder on the seismic shifts. Yes, COVID, inflation, interest rates, remote work, all that stuff that happened after this approval and is significant. Mr. Dooley, if anyone wants to look at another developer looking at the town of Portland, he was asked to come in and advise on possibly reworking the schools. That's a great video if you want to look it up. He talked about housing being the thing that could be used. And in terms of our proposal, one thing that I would say, because there's speculation about where this could be applied, we think that the proposal that we've made for the text amendment is responsibly applied in and around the central business district and would come back between meetings with some way of making it a little more focused on that region and take away some of the speculation about how this could be done elsewhere. So with that, we ask the commission to continue the hearing.
Okay. So, Bob, I guess with that request, if you guys want to keep the public hearing open, which I think we should since we have questions.
We need to, yes.
The date that this room is available is May 23rd. It is a Thursday, so 2 weeks from tomorrow. Finding a date for this room is very difficult in May and June. So that's I hope that works. That date works for you and the public. But that's to keep this kind of going. That's the date we would need to meet.
And what time would that be?
I would imagine we will do 6 o'clock again, so that we give people time to speak and you guys time to deliberate, as we have to be out of here at 9:30.
Should I make a motion? Do you have a?
Yeah, I think we'll need a motion to.
Oh, yes, I'm sorry.
Keep the hearing open. So then we're saying May 23rd will be the next meeting. Okay, motion to continue application 23-16, proposed amendment to the Portland zoning regulations, change to section 9.17.1 to increase the allowable MUD residential units to 350 from the current 240 and to increase the ratio of allowable apartments from 16 to 21 per 5,000 square feet of commercial space. Change to section 9.17.5.e to allow the sum of the total commercial area to include any single upper floor to the total commercial area, where only the ground floor counts currently. Application of BRT DeMarco, PTP LLC. May I have a second to the motion, please?
Second.
All in favor, say aye.
Aye.
Aye. Any opposed, say no. Okay, the public hearing is continued to May 23rd.
Thank you.
Thank you all. Let's see, don't leave yet.
We're not done.
We're not done yet.
We just have to adjourn, so just give me 1 second.
Okay, so, public comment, I guess, oops.
Yeah, no public comment tonight.
No public comment tonight. Okay, then may I have a motion to adjourn, please?
So moved.
And a second? All in favor, say aye. Aye. Opposed, say no. Okay, the meeting is adjourned.
I don't know. Did you second that?
See you, Terry.
Victoria.
Oh, okay. Thank you.